They said that was going to happen this week, was supposed to be the.
Tracy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mary.
I just wanted to thank you again for all your work with the search. You really did a great job beginning, middle, and end of that. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
I have to get another device for the board packet, so I'll be back.
Okay.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Charmaine. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Charmaine.
So we are live on YouTube, just FYI.
Hello, Chris.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Chris.
One good thing about all this, doing it by Zoom, we don't have to wear masks.
That's
That's true.
I find when I'm on the phone for curbside, the beard here is just puffy enough that the mask is rubbing up against the speaker on the phone. So I'm trying to say, I'm like, oh, curbside pickup, what spot are you in? And it, there's just a little bit of scratches. So I have to remember to hold the phone just a little bit away. It works just fine.
So we're on the website now too.
Okay, thank you.
So we're waiting for Harmeet, right?
Written for Harmeet, Caroline is excused tonight.
Right. Okay.
And I think Charmaine, I've got a still picture from her. I don't know if you guys are seeing.
We have it still too. Charmaine, can you hear us? Hmm.
We'll give it a few minutes.
Yeah.
Are Paul and Lisa also going to be joining us for the meeting?
I requested and we communicated with them that they would jump on for at 6 o'clock, but they usually are a little bit closer. Yeah, I think it may have been Lisa, because she's the one who put together the drawings on the latest schemes that we were looking at. So here's Paul now.
There's Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, folks.
Hi.
Hi there.
Uh-oh. Sounds like the dog taking a break for it.
I'm behind 2 closed doors and a floor away. And you can still.
That's funny. My corgi here just looked up, trying to figure out where that's coming from. He got his first taste of the ocean. He had never been there before. That was an interesting week last week. If you're 10 inches tall, the ocean is not your friend, I guess.
Presents some challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, Harmeet. How you doing?
Hello.
Hey, Harmeet.
Okay.
Wait a couple seconds for Charmaine to get back. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Everybody who's watching out there, if you would like to make a comment for the Board of Trustees, if you go to the Board of Trustees page of the Bethlehem Public Library and click on tonight's board packet, on that board packet is the board agenda. And on that agenda, there is a link, among other places that link exists, but there is a link to the contact the director. And if you want, we will have 2 opportunities during the meeting for public participation. Okay, Charmaine has let me know she's having trouble launching. She'll be in as soon as she can, she says.
Okay. Let's start the meeting then. It's 6:02. So call the meeting to order of the August 10th Board of Trustees for Bethlehem Public Library. And we would like to do a long-range plan update. Harmeet, I don't know if you want to introduce Paul, give a little intro there.
Sure. Paul, why don't you go ahead and take it from there?
I'd be happy to. As most of you know, because the committee has been fairly well supported with board members, we've been accomplishing a lot lately, even with the shutdowns. So I thought tonight perhaps I could give a quick verbal update on where things are and what the next steps are, so that you as a board in its entirety have a sense of what's coming up. You'll recall that we began with the existing conditions, narratives and reports, as well as asking the public in a "we heard you" and charrette scenario in order to establish priorities. Using those priorities, our office has prepared schemes 1, 2, 3, and 3A, which have all been reviewed by the committee. Each of these schemes, although I wasn't going to do a graphic presentation tonight, each of these schemes involves interventions into the existing building and extensions or additions to the existing building at varying levels. And we've gotten feedback from the committee, and our charge at the moment is to proceed with a hybrid or a compilation of some of the best versions from those various schemes. In the interim, we also developed a scheme 4A and 4B. These were done with the intention, really a twofold intention. One is to be a minimalist intervention. That is very little, if any, addition at all, really rearranging the spaces within the library, potentially doing some partition work, but really working within the existing footprint and structure for the most part, and rearranging furniture and setting up and establishing areas of service that relate to the way you actually serve your community. We did 2 different versions of that, which we've had an opportunity right before we went on vacation to review with Jeff just quickly, but we have an upcoming committee meeting on the 19th at 10 a.m. next Wednesday, and we'll be reviewing them with the committee as a whole. I said it was a twofold sort of priority for schemes 4A and 4B. One is that it's a minimalist intervention, but we actually did them. Lisa worked very carefully to try and craft them in a way that they could also be phase 1 of a longer term plan. In other words, the inception of these schemes as the first phase would not then obviate the ability to move forward with the other schemes as future phase. So as we're looking at the master plan, we are establishing the needs. We are establishing not just collection, but personal space. We're relating it as well to what we're learning about changes in social issues related to public space, some of which change more than you'd think and some actually less than you'd think. But we'll be going over that with the committee in detail. Then we will have a series of schemes that start with an early phase that could be done by itself. It's self-standing. It does make improvements and make changes, and then develop into future development of additions if the board decides to proceed with those. They can be combined or consolidated into a single project, and there is an efficiency of scale in doing something like that. But there is also then a community aspect to that, in that the funding for it would be all at once rather than as lower cost grant driven or fundraising driven schemes along the way. We did also do an analysis, a brief walkthrough and analysis of the Borthwick property. We will be amending that as an appendix to the overall master plan. The executive summary version of it is that it may have some short-term use for storage until such time as that space might be used for expansion in the future, if the additions go that way. But by itself, that structure, because of its structural capacity, the way it's built, and some other issues, is probably the fact that the land or the property is more valuable than the building itself. So there may be opportunities to look at what happens with that structure as we go forward, and keeping it in place until we need to take it down, or potentially looking at some of the grants for which demolition is an eligible Division of Library Development grant scope. And if that's feasible at some point in the future, it may be in the library's best interest to prepare that and prepare the site, then even adding some parking until such time as an addition might take that space. So again, we're working towards a meeting on the 19th with the committee. And then after that, I would anticipate that we would want to do a graphic presentation with the board as a whole, and bring you up to speed on the overall suggested consensus plan phase by phase, and looking at the budgets for all those pieces. That can be a lot to bite off in a board meeting, board of trustees meeting, where you also have an extensive agenda beyond that. So the committee may want to think about whether they recommend doing that as a special meeting of the board, setting that up, or whether we get on the agenda in September or October for the board meeting and go through it that way. But I would anticipate we'll be meeting with the committee on the 19th, and probably one other time after that before the board meeting as well, at least. So does that give everybody a sense of where things are? We're hoping to wrap up the master plan then after everybody's, I say back at school, would normally be back at school, but in the October range, and then we can look at what the next steps are and how to develop which ones you want to implement and in what order. Happy to answer any questions. I apologize, there's no graphics or fun things to look at today, but did want to give you an update on how things have been going and where we are. One other point I wanted to mention, Lisa, in looking at the comparison to the existing library you have, for each of the schemes, we're going to have essentially a spreadsheet, but it compares the square footage of your existing spaces, line item by line item, to the proposed spaces in each phase, and then also compares the lineal footage of shelving in your existing library per genre to what the proposed are phase by phase. So you would see, for example, I'm pulling, these aren't the real numbers, but you might say in phase 1, the children's room expands by 10%. If we get to it in phase 3, it would expand by 25%. The lineal footage of shelving would grow by 15% in phase 1 and 50% in phase 3. If those would be examples to show you what you get at each step of the way for each of the program areas in the building. We also then list the seating capacities for meeting rooms, study rooms, and so forth. And we've compared these to something we've already done, the code analysis, which addresses exiting and fire safety and all the other issues with the building.
So Paul,
all that will be part of that report as well.
and will we get all that information before the long range planning committee?
Yes, we will try and send that out. Let's see, if the meeting's the 19th. I would like to, we will try and send information the end of this week. We're or at the latest it would be Monday, but I think it'll be the end of this week is when we'll try and send that to the committee.
So it's my understanding then that at the committee, we will be deciding on a final plan.
At this committee meeting, we're going to show you the minimal intervention, the 4A and 4B, and a hybrid of the remaining phases. And we'll have an opportunity between then and your next Board of Trustees meeting to have a last final say on what we're going to recommend. So it's still informational on the 19th, but we're getting there. We're getting close because you've seen all the input up till now.
Okay, yeah, because the 19th seemed a little too soon to me for decision, having just gotten the 4A and 4B schemes.
Agreed.
Okay.
So my point is, but they're all sort of heading in one direction. We know where where we're headed. We just have to make some final decisions in order to present to the board with something that the committee has agreed. This is the consensus of the best path forward. And obviously cost is going to be one of those question marks as well to apply to each of these phases.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Michelle.
So on the Borthwick property, you're going to have information on the quick walkthrough. Do you have an estimate of the demolition cost? So should we go that way? Or is that something you
We
would do?
will,
or
yes.
something-
It would have to be part of because it would be an essential part of any construction cost. We would break that out as a piece,
No, I
yes.
don't have, what? Okay.
Great.
We would also have an allowance for hazardous materials in that building. We have not done testing per se, but based on our walkthrough, we can make
Some assumption.
some assumptions on that, yes.
Okay.
Okay. And we know you have it in the existing building, so we've already got line items for remediation projects as we go forward, as you're aware.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. I'm looking forward to seeing several of you on the 19th. Thank you for your time this evening. As always, if there are questions, please get them to Jeff and he'll forward them to us, and we'll talk before the meeting.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Okay. I'll excuse myself then if everybody's. Thank you very much.
You're good.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.
Okay, great. Thanks. Now going into remaining authorizations, we just have to do a vote on the authorizations on the bonding piece. Jeff, I don't know if you want to explain that quickly.
You bet. So we just, last month, we were talking about the bonding, the question of bonding the treasurer came up, and I know this had been discussed at some point in the past. We reach out to our insurance company, and it is, there's a nominal fee for bonding the treasurer to the same amount that Tanya and I, or the business manager and the director, are bonded for. Seems like a no-brainer. Just bringing it back for a vote on that because we said we would, and then we'll move forward with that.
Okay, great. I need a motion on that item.
I make a motion that we accept or amend the remaining authorizations for the library. It's on page 2 of the attached packet.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Any second? Michelle, great. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. Any opposed to the motion? Abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thanks. The next, Charmaine, good to see you on the video. It's okay.
We had video and then no audio, and then audio and no video. I apologize for showing up late.
No, that's fine. I know you were trying big time, definitely.
Thank you.
All right, public participation. Did you have to get any public participation?
No.
Can I stop things right here and ask one question or make a comment about the master plan?
Yeah.
I have to say, as a voting trustee, I feel a little bit out of the loop right now, not having been on the committee, which is understandable because you guys have put in so many hours. I suspect that Charmaine feels the same about knowledge about where we're going and what we might be voting on within the next month or two. Myself personally, I'm wondering if there's a way that I could sit down with somebody, participate in, be just a quiet voice in a meeting or something to see a little bit more of it hands-on. I'm a little bit nervous about getting to the point where I need to vote on something that I just am not familiar with for this larger decision.
That's a good point.
Mary, I think that to that point, we're
Mary,
all still waiting
have
for a
all
little
of-
bit of information.
I have 4A and 4B, but just looking at that sketch and reading it, I don't know everything that's been discussed and what the intent is for future plans, what kind of money we're talking about. I don't want to get to a meeting where everybody is ready to move forward and I become the sticking point because I simply don't understand things.
Yeah, and I don't want to step on anybody, but we are not to the point where Paul has not yet put numbers underneath all of these line items, so that information doesn't exist yet. I think so. We're we're still back up here. It feels like, from the
Okay.
presentation a little bit, it felt like we were, okay, we're done. Here's a sign, let's sign off on the long range plan. We're really still up here at this conceptual level to say, we
Okay.
have data from the public. We have, all the meetings with the staff and the board and all the community focus groups and all of those things. What does the committee and then the full board think would be a way to move forward? And then we say, okay, here's what feels like meets those needs that were expressed to us by the public. Here's what we know about libraries inside, and here's how we imagine could be the best step forward. And then numbers start to come up on that. This isn't a design, right? We're never going to get to design. It's part of a long-range plan. It's an idea and a concept. We say, okay, this feels like the right direction to go. Let's get some numbers under that. Oh, then we go look at some numbers, and then that comes back to the board. And then you start to make some thoughts
Okay.
about not just what do you want to do, but how do you get there? Is it, and that, Paul alluded to that when he said, oh, one time, fundraising all at once, or is this a 10-year siege of construction grant money? And we try to, to do a bunch of smaller projects stretched out. And so there's a lot of decision making left to go. It's just that the top-down concepts are starting to be locked into this, so these four big ways to move forward. And those are the kind of things that we're getting to the point where we're ready to making some decisions on that.
Okay, so right now what I have for drawings are 4A and 4B, and that's
Well,
all I have right now, and that's fine. That's all I'm expected to have and be familiar with.
well, I think at the last time Paul presented, we went through scheme 1, 2, and 3. Those were he presented those at a board meeting, and those were emailed out. And then these were the sort of the committee had asked him to go back and say, okay, these are 3 levels of sort of bigger intervention into the building. And then the committee said, what I'd really like you to look at is at the sort of no expansion or minimal expansion look. And that's the 4A and B. These sort of two different ideas of ways you might move forward and just rearrange the space inside the library. Okay. So now we've got, this array of 4 schemes that would go all the way from absolutely, well, you've got 5, do nothing, minimal intervention, a little bit more, a lot of bit more, and high-end intervention. So that's the sort of we have to start looking at a path before we say to Paul, let's get some numbers under this and start
okay
thinking about that.
Okay,
So,
I don't feel so left out anymore.
I don't want you to feel left out.
There's no numbers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just wanted to say, I also think some of the schemes, really pretty much all of the schemes were done prior to us getting any information on the Borthwick property that, unless I've missed something, we still haven't gotten. So,
I didn't see anything.
I feel like some of the comments that Paul made previously put us a little further ahead than where me as a committee member, I don't feel like we're wherever he thinks we are. So
I agree.
Mary. And I'm going to the meetings. So
Okay.
Lisa, what's your question, I guess, about the Borthwick property?
well, I thought we were going to be getting the report on the Borthwick property, and I don't believe I've seen it. I maybe missed something, but was that forwarded to us?
That doesn't exist yet.
I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
This is Sherman. Again, I missed the entire presentation. Again, my apologies. So I'm catching up and not having that information. I did get the larger copies of 4A and 4B, and I had seen them before because I had sat in at one of the meetings of the committee prior to this, just to kind of try to catch myself up, and I'm still running behind on that. It would be helpful for me, and I'm not sure, Jeff, if this is possible, to actually, I'm very visual, and so I see these plans. I'm trying to translate in my head what it means as I walk through different sections of the library. And I know that the library is closed, but I'm not sure. It would be helpful for me to actually be physically present, have someone walk me through what this all means, how that translates. And I don't know if other board members are interested in that, if it's possible, how many could be at a particular tour, if a tour is even possible. So that would be the first step that would be helpful for me. And not having been in the discussions, obviously, as this project's been rolling around, what I'm hearing is that people think we're in different places, or people have needs or wants for information, like the Borthwick property, or how many plans are there, and how did we get to 2 versus the 5. I just bring some experience on developing bonds and developing projects from my previous experience. For me, I wouldn't be comfortable. I need those numbers before I would even be comfortable. It's be helpful to have X number of plans. I don't care how many there are, 2, 3, 4, 5, with some ballpark number attached to them. And so it doesn't have to be a firm budget, but I know, so it's hard to say, okay, well, we're down to potentially 2 plans or 3 plans. It might be helpful to have a certain range with a certain range of amounts attached to them, even if it's a range, an estimate. Because just from my previous experience, it was helpful to be able to say, okay, well, if we went with plan B, for example, making this up, and it costs this much, if we knew that plan C would give us more than we wanted and was just a little bit more expensive, or if we knew that plan E was totally out of the range. So it would be helpful for me to have more numbers. And then also from hearing fellow trustees who've been in this process much longer than I, the whole question about the Borthwick property or other properties, like what stage are we at? And it sounds like some folks aren't particularly comfortable going forward much with decisions making, or even I guess I need to listen more to figure out how we got to this point in the decision making, not even decision making process, but this point of the discussion. But also for me personally, I would like to visually see some of the walkthrough, and it would be helpful to me at some point, even sooner as opposed to later, some of the figures that you're talking about. Unless people have already discussed figures, I just need to catch up on that.
No, at this point, no one has seen either the costs of any of these schemes or the linear footage or square footage improvements that will come with these schemes. So absolutely not. No one is going to be asked to make any kind of decision, right? Down selection on those until we have those numbers in front of us. That's absolutely 100% not going to happen. So at this point, we're all waiting for those same numbers. I think from Paul, we thought we would have had them prior to this meeting. We'll have them now before the meeting on the 19th. So as soon as we have those, I think we can discuss them as a committee and then bring sort of our inclinations. I won't even say decision, right? We'll bring our inclinations from the committee meeting back to the board, right, to talk through a little bit. But nothing happens until you've got dollars and square footage numbers, right? Because otherwise, what are you deciding?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
I think the idea on the visual walkthrough is a great one. I think it would, either we could actually do that in person, maybe, or we could have some of the video camera kind of walk through. Maybe we could do it like remotely and in some way. But I think that's a great idea, because I too look at these schemes and kind of want to make sure I understand all the nuances in them. So I would love to have a safe, socially distanced walkthrough of the schemes, possible.
Okay. So I think right now we actually have a unique opportunity. If you'd like to do that, we don't even have to go weird off hours. If people are available, maybe weekend, we could do it on Saturday pretty easily. I think we could do that in a safe way.
Okay, great.
That would be great.
Yeah.
For me, it's an opportunity to basically translate the paper plan into a spatial, like a visual plan. And if I might ask a question, because again, it's my inexperience being on the board. In a project this size, I'm curious that the whole board has to be obviously well-versed in it and asking various questions. Why does it start at a committee level? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's a long-range plan committee starting, and so that kind of tradition of the library has been, that it comes up every 5-10 years that we do a long-range plan. So it started at the committee level here, but I mean, there's no intention to exclude any board member from anything. Obviously, we have most of the board on the committee anyway. So, but we would bring it back, and for a lot of interchange on any options or anything that we would do.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I wasn't assuming that people were being excluded. I just, again, from my previous experience, something at this level would be presentations before the entire board at all times, but again, it's missed my inexperience. So thank you.
So the other thing I just want to clarify, because it's easy to get a lot of weight to this. This is a decision for an idea or a concept that enters into the long range plan, which the library is required to have, by the New York State Library. We have to have both a services we have to have a long range plan, and that can include both the services of the library and some sort of concept of what the board at the time imagines a building to be. This is in no way design plans for the creation of a project. This is the consensus of the board saying, we feel that this kind of plan moving forward would be the best sort of idea to address the long range plan, the long range needs of the community. That's a totally separate discussion than if the board says, if we have a consensus at the board and the board says, we are ready. We really feel that this is what is needed by the community. Let's get moving on a design. Let's get to the point where there's an actual design. We get down to brass tacks of what that looks like. Yeah. And that's why if it feels like the discussion's up here a little bit, it's because this is the design idea that goes into the long range plan. It does not necessarily mean that the board says, let's go on this, we're doing a project. That is a whole nother set of processes that have to happen. What we're saying is, have you identified, have you looked at, have you polled the community, have you talked to the staff, thought amongst yourselves, figured out what you think the needs of the community are, and how the library can meet that, both from a services and building standpoint. That's the charge of the committee. So it feels a little bit weightier than that because we're down in the weeds a little bit on some of this stuff, but that's where we are. There's a whole different set of fights to happen about we've decided a project and we're going to move forward about how that happens and what that actually is. So there's a whole nother chance. The actual design work is a separate thing completely. We're not there.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the long range steering committee? I'll just move that agenda item up. If not, we'll go into the approval of the previous meeting minutes. People take a look at the previous meeting minutes and see if any questions or concerns in them. Okay, I'll take a motion on that.
Second, or do you need a motion, or did you make one?
No, usually the motion from the membership. So
moved.
Okay, Charmaine, second.
Second.
Michelle,
Yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Financial report and treasurer's update. Jeff, you want to do a quick?
Okay, yeah, I'll do a brief update on this. We're we are slightly below where we might expect to be on salaries, as you would expect. We have some unfilled positions. If you look at our expenses for the past month, in the same range, but slightly lower, given that the contract was signed and it's been put in effect now. So that's there. I think that, of course, always salaries and benefits are the biggest driver of our expenses. This year, we have had some additional expenses. There's some sort of capital expenses, not big C capital, but little C capital, as far as things we have to invest in, like extra book trucks to be able to handle the amount of material that we're moving around inside the library. So there's some additional expenses, but nothing really that moves the needle compared to the base of the budget, which is the salaries and benefits. Other than that, nothing. It's just this is the first month of the new fiscal year. So from an idealized standpoint, we've got full budget lines, but from a practical standpoint, we're actually at one of the lower times of the year for the amount of cash that we have. Those are the cash cycle and the budget cycle are off slightly, and they marry up once the tax money is received. Starts to come in September and October as it's received by the school district. So if you look at the balances, we're actually at next month will be a little bit lower. We're at sort of the valley of our cash balances right now, and then even though from a budgetary standpoint it looks like, oh, it's a brand new budget year and all the money's there, there's a lag in that receipt of the money from the school district. So that's just a high level look at that. Yeah, I think that's about where we are.
Any questions on that financial report?
I just had a question. I know I mentioned the state aid in terms of any issues that you might see when the state aid might be coming, or any because of the current situation with pandemics and all the rest. Do you see any issues with the state aid, the flow of state aid, the amount of state aid?
Yeah, so we estimate, and again, this is always a real estimate. It's the money is given from the state to the Division of Library Development, passed on to the Upper Hudson Library System, and then it comes to us. So that the state fiscal year starts on April 1st. They usually, in a normal year, get their 90% check of all of their lines of state aid. In September, they're saying, oh, by September, we expect it September, October. This year, we have been told so in our amount of that is about $24,000 directly from the state funneled through Upper Hudson. So that amount, we have been told to expect the total to be about 80% of normal. So figure 20% less than we had budgeted for from that particular line. And that we really shouldn't hold our breath expecting a normal delivery time for that money. So this has much bigger implications for the library system as an organization than it does for the library as an organization. So those services that are provided to us by the library system can be impacted by that, though. As an organization, they've got their own finances, and they will, they understand that their money coming from the state is always a little bit wonky. So I think it's a very safe and a reasonable way to expect that by the end of the year we will have 80% of the $24,000 that we are expecting, absent some sort of federal money that would come in and flow through in some way, shape, or form, or some other kind of major change. But I think that seems like the reasonable, normal guess.
Okay. And that's the end of the calendar year, correct?
You're
talking about the budgetary year.
It's not even our budgetary year. It's really based on the state's budget year. So that's April to March. Okay. And then there's even delay from that. So their budget year starts on April 1st. Upper Hudson normally expects their money about September. Let's say it comes December, some portion of it. It may not even be the full 80%. That's, yeah. And we've never had it extend beyond our fiscal year. It kind of falls in our fiscal year, but they don't answer to our school year, fiscal year. They're not.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
If we're ready, I'll make a motion that we accept the financial report as presented on pages 10 through 15, which includes the specific disbursement schedule, which is on page 12.
Second.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mary. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor, vote aye, signify by raising your hand. Okay, any opposed, abstention, motion carries. We want to talk about the treasurer update now, I think. We'll go right into it, Jeff. What do you think?
Sure. So that's actually, so we're going to look at on page 16, there is a job status report. And on the job status report, there is the library district treasurer. We are actively pursuing a candidate, and that candidate has requested the rate of $50 per hour, which was above what we were authorized the last time we were here when we authorized that position. It is, however, the same rate that was given to the former treasurer.
So the committee has met and has reviewed the received resumes. We've done interviews, and we do have a candidate we want to hire. And we would like to hire her yesterday. If you're hearing our meeting, we have a lot for her to do. So we are hoping that this gets approved tonight. It would be contingent, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be contingent upon the background check.
That's correct.
But we would hire her, and then the background check would take place in a parallel after she's been hired.
Yes.
Okay.
So it sounds like what you're asking for is a motion to approve the $50 an hour and the recommendation of the committee for that.
I think we should discuss the whole report and just accept the whole personnel report. I guess this is whatever we call this, the hires, the personnels, and we can do it as part of that. But
That's fine.
Since this
Okay.
position reports directly to the board, we want to make sure that everybody is aware of what is embedded in this report.
So the two actions that I'm requesting are the request for the salary change in the approved hours, the approved amount per hour for the district treasurer, and to fill a library page for 11.67 hours a week at what is currently 11.80, but will go up to minimum wage on January 1st.
I have a question. So you had talked about $50 an hour being the rate of the previous treasurer. Was that the person's starting salary, or did it change over the time that they were here, or that was the starting salary?
That was, yeah, for the
Basic.
amount of time. That was the salary.
Thank you.
I make a motion to accept the report as it presented with the two specific action items as noted.
I'll second.
Thanks, Mary. Lisa, second. I did have a question on the page. Is that in the current environment that we're in? That's still a needed position, and kind of how would that person fit into the current environment that we're in?
Yeah, so that these positions are needed and are shelving all the library materials that are returned.
Okay.
If I didn't need it, I wouldn't have put it there. I think it's a very important position. There's still a lot of items being checked out and returned, and the pages are an important part of that, as well as doing other work that is outside of their job description, but tasks that we don't normally ask them to do, just as part of the team that's in there.
Okay, great. Any other questions on that motion? Second. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. Okay, any opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. You have approval for those positions. Okay, director's
And I
report.
just, how do we proceed with the treasurer? Tracy or Jeff, will someone reach out tomorrow and ask her when she can start?
Yes, I will, Mary.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Do you
let's see
have
if- Mary,
Do you have a particular date in mind? Sorry, Mark.
ASAP, I would say.
Okay, okay.
I would say. So let's see if we can get her in as soon as possible. Yeah.
And Tanya, don't cringe. It's not all going to fall on you. We have a lot of ideas about what this treasurer is going to be doing. So we'll talk.
Okay, as long as, I mean, I think it would be helpful if it's on a day that like I'm working in the library, not on a week that I'm working remotely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great, Jeff. Yep.
Okay, we're rolling to the director's report.
Yep.
All right, so most of it is there for the reading, but we have been doing a lot of changes in the building to sort of accommodate. We put in new touchless faucets. The previous faucets were automatic shut off, but they required people to touch them. So we're putting in new faucets in the bathrooms just to get rid of more touching. Right? Whatever surfaces we can have people not touch is better for everybody. We did, based on the results of reopening libraries project, the Realm project that we've been doing a lot of talking about, where they're doing some scientific studies in conjunction with Battelle Labs to look at how long the COVID virus can survive on the surfaces of various library materials. They had been recommending a 3-day quarantine based on that science. We've been going forward with a 3-day quarantine as the sort of the science we had about how long virus could exist on these materials. And based on that, we've moved new data on certain types of materials. We moved to a 96-hour quarantine period. So you'll see there's 4 sheds in the parking lot now that allow us to hold those materials outside for that required 96 hours. Now, there are downstream effects of this, right? So the system has turned back on overdue notices. So a lot of our calls last week from patrons, we got overdue notices, but said, I returned those things. Great is that we've had no fines, so that decreases that tension a little bit about being overdue. But people are still confused about the fact that we hold those materials for 96 hours before we check them in, and then when they check in, we waive those fines. So it is possible for people to sort of assess themselves fines if they go in and they see an overdue notice, and then they're slightly overdue. They go in and renew those items. They can then have a fine assessed to their card. But we are now actively running reports every day to make sure that those fines get removed as well. So it was sort of a backdoor way for someone to get a fine where it wasn't happening at the check-in process, which we can control pretty tightly. The people's interaction with their online account is just a separate thing. So that's moving forward. We still have a lot of virtual programs. I think this director's report is chock full of a lot of the efforts of the staff, and I'm sort of really proud this month of everything we've been doing. We've been getting a lot of good press. We had some good numbers, particularly for the Sip and Learn Albany Visitors project we did in conjunction with the Albany Visitor Center. In addition, that particular program in particular is recorded on YouTube and can be watched later asynchronously by people who weren't able to be at the program. So that's sort of a double dip on that program. We get to do it live for the people who want to be live, and then we can watch it later. That link's in my board report. In addition, we got some good press for the story walk that was installed at the Elm Avenue Park. And that's just a way to physically interact with the story as well as be outside, which right now is something we definitely want to encourage, and that's done in conjunction with the town of Bethlehem Parks and Recreation. They've been great to work with. We've had a longstanding relationship with them to provide Wi-Fi at various parks around town. And this is just another example of that partnership. And so it's great that they're so willing to work with us on that. So that's good. I do just have to give credit to the book bundle thing. So the book bundles have been extremely popular. I put statistics on that in the board packet. So we have several tables set up for book bundles in the library. We had to get our process figured out so we could speed up. These are bundles of books that are selected by the librarians and then checked out in advance. So when people pull up, they call up and give us our name. We verify how many items are in, usually 10, unless there are multiple family members, and then we take those out via the regular curbside pickup process. So that has been extremely popular. Again, we thought that maybe this was going to be a way for parents who don't know the particular titles that they're interested in, so makes requesting a little bit hard. You just need a bunch of books for the kids at a certain reading age. We kind of thought that would be the push, but truly the biggest single numbers have been just regular adults giving us some ideas of what their reading interests are, and then new and popular mysteries, whatever they're interested in, and then we get those out. So there's been well more than 1,400 items pushed out that way just last month alone. So that helped us return physical circulation to our primary circulation for the first time since March. So again, we had been basing much of our business, our checkouts have been electronic, and that's still going on, still gaining, still popular, but at the same time, the physical checkouts, both curbside pickup through the request system and book bundles have put that clearly up over the top as far as our most popular service right now, as it always has been, physical checkouts of items. So that's good to see. Lots of popularity in the pop-up library. I think we've settled into, for the rest of August, we're going to be offering on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday afternoon. We had tried some mornings to see maybe we were missing some people in the mornings. The morning times, doing it when curbside pickup is not happening, have always proven to be less popular. So the people who are coming are very appreciative. Some of our smart patrons have figured out that they could come in the morning and get their holds from inside the library, not through the curbside process, because when we're at the pop-up library, we'll go in and get the holds too, as well as book bundles. So that's happening, but we've really locked in as the popular times as Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday afternoons. This is all new use pattern for us, so we're just figuring this out as we go along, but that's what we'll be doing for the rest of the month. I included in the pop-up library, of course, make and take crafts, ways that we can do something that we normally would be doing as part of being in the library or a summer reading program, have crafts for kids to be able to come and pick up and extend that learning experience once they go home beyond just reading, which is also very important. So I do want to mention that we are continuously evaluating the materials lines. You'll see that electronic materials have, for up till now in this calendar year, been really dominating the money that we've been spending on materials. But you'll see we're going to load balance those things, and as physical circulation comes back on, people do appreciate those new and popular titles in physical form, and we'll be moving toward that, and we'll be balancing those two collections. So We're not overspending the materials line, but we are shifting out those things around from when we made the budget last December and we were thinking about what we were going to be spending our money on. Obviously, we had a greater need for electronic materials for a while, and now we have to keep that high level on electronic materials because that's not dropping as physical circulation continues to increase, but maybe not having this as the only priority, but make sure we're focusing on the physical materials as well. And you'll see that at the pop-up library and through our hold system, lots of new items that are going out to people. So just every word I say during these meetings, I always just have to give a quick thank you out to the staff that transcribe these meetings word for word afterwards. It's a lot of work. It is a tedious job, largely unsung, but I think it's important to mention that those staff people take that that YouTube translation that happens automatically and turn that into real English. And as part of the executive order that allows us to have these meetings virtually, requires that we provide a transcript of that meeting. So we're doing that as well. And that's part of the task that those circulation staff who are working from home, that's one of the tasks that they can do well from working at home, right? So it just is an example of that type of work. As well, at the same time, we had, before COVID happened, been planning on a new calendaring system. The previous system was really aging, about 18-year-old infrastructure. So we're moving towards a new calendaring system, and that's still continuing on. My data migration is happening actively. It's just sort of a good time for that to move forward. The MERV filters that have been requested for the HVAC system have not yet been installed, but we are at or approaching the original guest installation date for those when we put the order in back a couple months ago. So that would be just good, providing another level of higher level filtration for that handling system in the library. And then just a quick mention that we had a couple of our staff people that were asked to participate in the Upper Hudson Library System Anti-Racist Task Force. So one of the particular concerns that was identified to Upper Hudson was how civil service can impacts or perpetuates systemic racism. So that is, Tracy being our local expert, she was asked to participate on that committee and bring some of the sort of practical expertise about how there's a lot of misinformation about how civil service actually works, and I think she can bring that practical level of information to that committee and allow them to judge it by what actually happens at civil service. So that was I was proud of that. On page 21 of the board packet, don't get into the weeds on this graph. You're welcome to review it later on. I just think it's very illustrative of the continuously increasing popularity of curbside pickup as we move forward. When we started it back on June 9th. So, it's almost that first week when we were doing it, it almost seems like a childhood now compared to the expertise that we've developed about how to provide this service to people in a way that is efficient and smooth. Not perfect, but pretty good actually. So we're doing quite a lot of all those physical checkouts, pop-up library, book bundles, curbside pickup. Those are how those are going out of the building. And we are, compared to the July of last year, we circulated 55% of our normal expected circulation. So while that's a significant decrease, it is significantly higher than any month post-March, right? So we are really pushing a lot of items both electronically and in physical form out of the library right now. So that's, I think it's impressive. So that's there. I did include numbers. I was asked at the last board meeting to give some closer numbers as far as Hoopla is concerned. It starts on page 22. We wanted to see if that was a service we would continue. You can see from the chart on page 22 that Bethlehem Public Library, we have 1,300 people, 1,378 people as of the printing of this report that had signed up since we started Hoopla back in March in response to the pandemic crisis. And we have had 4,489 checkouts through that service. So it's a popular service. And, it is a little bit of a different model. It's a pay-as-you-go model. Each of those checkouts, there's a cost that comes to the library, but it really has settled out to where we can estimate what that's likely to look at each month. And then on page 23, you'll just see that what people are checking out as we look at it. Mostly audiobooks and ebooks. You can't see my cursor, of course, but mostly audiobooks and ebooks. Those are the two biggest formats. Plenty of checkouts in comics, movies, music, and TV, but really what Hoopla does really well is make sure that the titles that they have, smaller catalog than Overdrive, but for the titles they have, they're available without wait. So if someone just needs something to listen to in their car, if they're going on a trip and they have to have an audiobook, if they need an ebook to read, Hoopla is your best bet. That is a good place to go for those items that are always available to our patrons. So that's that service, and it's my absolute recommendation that we continue to offer this. I think you will hear a lot of outcry from people if we were to pull the service back. It was one that we were on the fence about offering anyway. It was we talked about it when we started offering Canopy, and I don't think it's a service that I would want to pull back from the public. I think it's been demonstrated to be very popular with them. So with that, I think we'll look at that on page 24. You can see my statistical report. I won't run through this line by line, but you can see ebook use is up 54% in total. Electronic use is up 54% over last year's electronic use. That's half again. We had started to see before the pandemic, we had started to see electronic use numbers still increasing, but the rate of increase had really started to decline. It was settling into some sort of number. And then the pandemic just applied, take that right to the firewall, and we were seeing increases again, the likes of which we have not seen since sort of 2012, 2013, as this ebooks were really cooking. The month-to-month and year-to-year increases were big, and we're seeing that again. We will continue to monitor that as the library, people calling me randomly, as the library begins to reopen. What does the physical circulation do to that electronic circulation? We'll be watching that and balancing those collections and the budgets for those collections as we move forward. So, slight bumps in e-magazine use. Equipment use is way down. Obviously, there's a number of the equipment items that we can't check out to people. So you'll see on page 25, just electricity use. Nothing surprising or amazing here. Gas use goes to almost zero. It's not all the way to zero in practicality, but it's almost zero. And our electric use has so far, even though it's been a pretty hot year, been significantly lower than previous years. So that is that's following that trend line that you see sort of in the green and the blue, 2018 and 2019. Since we've had our new HVAC system, there are significant decreases in that electricity line, which is mostly air conditioning, right? For those months, and that's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
In that decrease in electric cost, and specifically about air conditioning.
Yeah.
Do we also have to factor in the element that we're virtually not in the building on the weekends? Is that part of that savings? I mean, 5 days a week we're in the building, but
yes. Well, and really we have people in there 6 days a week because we're doing some maintenance work over the weekend, some extra cleaning. That happens.
Okay.
From a practical standpoint, yes. So there's a little bit less on lights, and I would say that that's the decrease you'll see on that chart on page 25, the top half, which is where we're looking at electronic use. This year's use is that blue line. That belly in the line that drops is mostly due to the fact that the building was closed. As we figured out the scheduling of the lights and got those shut down, we really were able to bring those. That number just was naturally lower as we were shut the building down. You see, it's headed back more towards normal, even though it's a warm year. So yes, some of that I don't think there's a significant decrease over 2018 and 2019. I think that decrease in 2018 and 2019 is related to the fact that the building's not as open.
I think though that some of it still is our balancing. I think we're still getting a little bit of a bang from the final balancing that we got in that last push. And I'm really interested to see what that is. It's not all of it, but I think there is an element there.
And we've got some, right now it's been hot. We are bringing in a lot of outside air. So the humidity control in the building is not what we would want or really expect, but that's an artifact of the fact that we're bringing in a lot of fresh air. That was, when we first designed the system, some of the issues we had with controlling humidity were exactly due to the fact that we were bringing in so much outside air. Right now, in a pandemic, that's a feature, right? So extra outside air is what they're recommending. We have lots of extra outside air. That comes at a cost of a loss of humidity control. So we're running little dehumidifiers all over the outside portions of the community room and boardroom and the hallways to try to keep that humidity within reason. So, but even with running those, you're still not seeing the electric.
Well, that's significant because those things are energy hogs. Those things are real energy hogs.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's just to keep them under control. So that's that on page 25. And page 26, I want to bring quickly and briefly, I'm sorry, to page 27. For e-content, you'll see that July e-content use was slightly down. So March, April, May, so February, March, April, May, June increases in or certainly our big use, overdrive use was up and up and up and up. And finally in July, compared to the previous month, there was a tip over and there was a little bit less use in overdrive compared to the month before. So I think that represents some of the use that's happening in physical circulation as we check out more items in the library. There's just a little bit of less pressure on that e-content now. It's a 1 month trend. We'll continue to monitor this, but that's where I'm saying we're going to be load balancing our materials line as hopefully we can get more and more physical materials into people's hands. We'll be buying fewer and fewer of those electronic materials at the same time. And then I want to bring attention to page 29. I know these graphs are very small and I apologize for that. The link to the Tableau, which is the public facing version of all of these statistics available to anybody. There again in my board packet, there's a link at the top of this page. But in the middle on the top row, you'll see physical versus digital circulation. There's a green graph and a blue line. And you can see the pandemic bump in the blue line as e-circulation increased as physical materials weren't available. And then for this month, a major drop in physical circulation and then back up to higher than our electronic use. Still those patterns aren't normal yet, but we've turned to a pattern of higher physical.
Power cord for this?
So that is my director's report.
Running out of battery.
Hey, Jeff, one of the other items that looks to have dropped off significantly is DVDs. Have we considered doing bundles for those as well?
So they're available via bundle. So we've done some CDs and some DVDs. We've also invested in something called a binge box, which is a movie case that has 6 items in it, 6 movies in it that are sort of related around the theme. We've been offering it. We put all those out at curbside. I think just in the end, the use that we're seeing is that continuous use of the new movies that people will be putting on hold anyway. I think that's still there. What is missing is, of course, that serendipitous browsing of the DVD collection. I think that's just down. Yeah, if you want to roll back up to page 24, you can see the collections that are more and less damaged by the current checkout scheme. Again, adult fiction down 30%, whereas nonfiction down 46%. There's some differences across nonfiction and fiction. Audiobooks, which are already heavily moving towards electronic downloads being their primary, they were already more than 50% checkouts were electronic anyway, so less of a decrease than the collections that are heavily physical and less available or less desired in electronic format. So lots of the kids formats really desirable in a physical format, less desirable electronically.
My apologies. I didn't realize I was not muted when I was yelling for the power cord. So thank you.
Not a problem.
So just to clarify then, because I thought that was a great idea, Harmy, about movie bundles.
Yes.
So are those available at the pop-up library or can you request them through curbside?
You should be able to, well, you can request all your movies through curbside, if you know the individual movie that you want very easily. That operates just like it always has. But we can do movie bundles just as easily. Select a bunch of, you tell us you want some certain movies and when you call us up and leave us a message, we'll pick out 10 movies or so maybe, and we'll pick out 10 movies for you based on a theme of what we have in the library, and it'll be available to you in the movie bundle.
Okay, I also saw in the director's report that seeds were available. Is that just at the pop-up library?
That's just at the pop-up library. Yeah, and we're getting late in the season. It's mostly the some of the herbs that might still have time to come up in time. It's just that seed library is a little heartbreaking. It was really set to go this year, and the timing was just the worst. So
Yeah.
we're gonna circle back, and we'll be ready to go next year.
Good.
Jeff, the other item you mentioned was the reminders, or the overdue notices. Is there a way for us to modify those to say that there's now a 4-day delay between submitting an item and it being checked in?
So here, a lot of discussion about this. Some of these things are centralized to all of the libraries at the system, and it is, while 90% of libraries are operating in a certain way, not 100% of them are operating in a certain way. So we end up having to put weasel-wordy stuff in there like May. We had a big discussion. Most libraries are not currently assessing fines. They're kind of being like we are. We're just getting rid of those fines as we check in. But getting 100% sign-in from all the libraries so we can put that on the overdue notices is proving to be difficult. So they're not always directly under our control. So that may be, we'll continue to explore that.
Jeff, can you just comment on new materials and is everything back? How quickly is it getting into circulation? I know a lot of publishers at the beginning of all of this kind of they had stopped sending and publishing. So,
well, I mean, and in the beginning of this, yeah, even our book jobbers weren't shipping anything. So it was like the whole system shut down. A lot of publishing got kicked till now. As people weren't sure, the March, April release dates. We're seeing this fall is going to be really a quite dense and concentrated bunch of releases. I think people were expecting them to be normal in September, and things are not necessarily normal right now, but they are starting to release those books anyway. I don't know how that's going to affect their sales numbers, but we certainly are getting those materials in. So we had a massive backlog of physical materials that were in the library getting ready to be processed, and the technical services staff, as well as the other staff people who have been assisting technical services, normally not part of their job, have really been pushing that stuff through. It's summertime. People want their beach reads, right? People need things, and so we are getting those items out really very quickly. And so it's a return to normalcy. Again, as far as the publishing industry is concerned, the impacts to them long term or even medium term, I can't speak to, but we're getting in the titles that we would want in the numbers that we want and getting those out. When we do a pop-up library, what are we doing? We're skimming off the best stuff, right? We're taking all the cream and we're putting that stuff out for people to find the most popular items, the most popular brand new books. And then, our heavy requesters, they haven't slowed down. So actually I was looking at the numbers again on that page, that statistical report on page 24. There's a line we don't pay much attention to. That's the interlibrary loan line. That's where we talk about borrowed to and from. Our numbers of borrowing and loaning are totally normal. So the courier system, though delayed, is operating at its nominal capacity. So the July capacity is pretty high. That's the month where we have most things flying around. So the decreases are all in the checkouts that people come into the library and request their things. As far as the number of requests and the number of items flying around the system, that's all normal or above normal. So
that was going to be my follow-up. I wasn't sure if all the libraries were kind of jumping back in with both feet or kind of delaying, trying to catch themselves up, whether it was for fiscal reasons or whatever. It's a little hard to tell.
Yeah, there could well be short, medium, and long-term impacts to the ability of libraries to get these materials into their collection. Luckily for Bethlehem, we have the staff to be able to process those materials quickly, a sufficient materials line to be able to buy what we're buying anyway, and our items go to our patrons first, as they always have, both electronically and in physical format. So we are filling that very quickly. Is that going to be true for all libraries across the system? What are their fiscal impacts? Libraries have a lot of different fiscal situations right now, and I think there's absolutely going to be some short, medium, and long-term impacts to that. There's staff that are laid off all at libraries across the system. You know, and a lot of libraries don't have the knowledgeable staff that we have to begin with, right? So, you know, they're adapting their processes, they're getting the items out, put in place. And that's not true for everybody. A lot of places are just trying to survive right now. So, you know, that may impact the collection at some point down the road. But for us, I think as far as new materials are concerned, we're in very good shape.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Any other questions for Jeff on the director's report?
Hey, Jeff, one other question on curbside pickup.
Sure.
Any thoughts about how we maintain that going into the winter?
That's interesting. So yes, we've already had that, and I think we can start to talk about that reopening plan that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. I think one of the realizations that I would love to not be true is that as we reopen the library to browsing, curbside doesn't get to go away. I keep hearing about that from members of the public. I think we'll have to assess those numbers too. We don't know because we haven't started allowing people back into the library for browsing. I would love to be able to say, then we don't need curbside pickup at all anymore. But I have a feeling curbside pickup is going to be with us for the foreseeable future. So yes, we're looking at how we can maybe not have 4 spots, maybe a couple, some sort of tent structure out on outside the garage. I always considered the garage to be a major weakness, that was what was facing our public, that the front of the building was a big, dumb garage. But actually in this one particular instance, the garage is a real savior. And so, you know, allows us to have quick and ready access from that back of the circulation area straight out to the public with a wide door, allows lots of social distancing for the staff in there. And yeah, we're talking about the poor man's snow melt system that would blow hot air from the garage out over the surface and make it already. We've had, so it rains hard sometimes in the summer. We get big thunderstorms, hurricanes sometimes, even remains of them. There was an area as we were leaving the garage that was just a slick spot. We had a couple of staff members fall. So we had to modify that. Because, so just, we're not even to snow and ice. We're just to rain. And so we've looked at that. I think we've absolutely mitigated that with some good mats there that allow those areas to stay dry. So you can only imagine that gets exacerbated as the weather gets worse. So, so yes, we're looking at maybe a tent that would somehow marry up to the garage and allow us to go out, sides that could go down or up. We don't want to block off the sidewalk. Lots of those kinds of questions that I would love not to have to worry about. But it's a good question.
Great. Any other questions of Jeff before we move into the next item? Okay, great. So I don't know if there's a UHLS report this month, Lisa?
The Upper Hudson Board doesn't meet and decided not to meet in August. However, the service committee did meet earlier this month, and we have 9 applications in for construction grants. We haven't gotten all the details at this point on each of them, but you know, we have a much smaller pot of money this year, a little over $400,000 to divide up. And I think probably in early September, we'll be meeting to kind of, you know, go over the details of that. We did also have a complaint, I'm sure Jeff knows all about it as well, from one of the libraries, Albany Public, on our guidelines regarding the 90% award criteria, and they were not happy with basically the criteria made them ineligible. So we've had to kind of address some of those concerns and moving forward with that. I mean, personally, my opinion is in the next few years, the likelihood of tapping into a 90% award is probably about nil. But I think, you know, there are some things that we can do to address some of those concerns. So we'll probably be doing that as well. That's it.
So just quickly, just to bring Charmaine up maybe a little bit, when it comes to New York State Library construction grants, there are 3 levels of matching that are available specifically for the construction method, bounded by, of course, the fact that we're talking about $400,000 total for 29 libraries. many libraries are at the 50% match level. That is Bethlehem. There is no way we are ever going to be at any level but a max of 50%. Some libraries, based on economic need, are at 75% match level, and then the state authorized a system could opt into allowing a 90% match level for libraries that are at severe need. So they would, the library would supply 10%, but the total amount that they're allowed to hand out under that 90% rule is 10% of the total amount. So $40,000 would be the maximum that could be handed out under the 90%. So. Oh, you're muted, Charmaine, sorry.
The last sentence you said, my audio is kind of flipping a bit. The last about the percentages, the 10%. Say again that if you.
Sorry. So only 10% of the total amount of money that is granted to Upper Hudson to hand out may be given out under the 90% level of match donation. So for take this year for $400,000 roughly, $40,000, 10% of that is eligible for that higher level of match. So we were never in the 75% category either. So it really never, it doesn't really affect us. So it's of less concern, but there it is.
Well, if you, I don't know enough about it, obviously, I just got the quick lesson on it. But if it is something that could feed inequity, it is something that should be looked at.
Yeah, I think it was put in both in my history as director, the 75% was created specifically maybe 6 or 8 years ago. I can't remember exactly, to try to address that there's just some libraries that were getting the bulk of the money because they had the money to match. And so the 75% level was put in for exact reasons. And then the system had to define what its criteria were for handing out that 75% match. And then the system also had to define the criteria for the 90% match. And as you can imagine, if your library does or does not fall into that match level, especially if it's liminal, that can cause a lot of stress and anxiety and angst. So it's not something I stress about particularly because we've never been close to any of the criteria for any of those things.
Yeah, we're not going to be close.
No.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa. Moving on to new business, board committees. I think Kristen put out in the board materials the current roster of the committees. You know, I would say that we're always interested in more people joining committees. So they're, you know, it's a kind of fluid list, but if you take a look at it and if there's any additions to be made, please make them, send them in.
As the only person on the personnel committee and the newest person on the board, I make a impassioned plea for folks to join me there. So.
Okay. Yep, and there's some other committees that have very small numbers. So, you know, the extent that people can take that, I mean, it really can be, committees are as intensive as you want them to be in some ways. It's not that much. It's like at most, you know, I've been on the committees for a couple of years now, and it's like really quarterly or every other month at most. And it's a good way to get deeper knowledge into the different areas of the library though. So I would encourage people to join different committees if you could. Okay, great. Fines, do we have a?
Before we jump, I would just, if we could get a vote on this page 30, if the board, someone would just make a motion that this is the committee, these are the committee memberships right now, that the board's authorized, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I would ask if we have a motion, but also to make sure that it's as of right now, and we wanted people to join as well. So
moved. So
okay.
moved.
Okay, Charmaine, any second? Michelle, thanks. Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, abstentions, great, motion's carried. So as of today, those are the committees moving forward. Okay, but again, please encourage people to join as well. So we have a new business item on fines.
Yeah. So I want to go ahead. Sorry, Mark.
I did have a question about at some point we're going to turn them on. Or, you know, I think we need to give people a lot of notice on that. So I'm thinking we should talk about like maybe, November 1 or December 1 or some other date. It's a target date, and start socializing that date, because either we're going to exempt them completely this year or we're going to turn them on, and we should turn them on. I honestly think we should turn them on, but give people a lot of notice on that.
So under the Emergency Authorization Act that was put in place to give me some sort of discretion over the patron conduct policy and the borrowing policy, which includes fines, we've been waiting fines. That ends at this board meeting. So I have put myself on the line and told our public we are going to give you at least a month's notice. So I think it seems very reasonable that we would tell people, give them ample notice. And I think that just seems completely reasonable. But I wanted to talk about this separate from our other discussion about reauthorizing that other board action. That I think is a good conceptual discussion for us to have. Is when would seem like a reasonable time for us to begin to turn these lines back on, and then and I agree with Mark. At least a month. That is, I've been telling our public, I'll give you at least a month's notice, because that it really has reduced all those questions that people have been asking us about overdue notices. They're like, huh, as opposed to, ugh. So, it changes from oh, can you give me information as opposed to I'm really mad about the fact that you're trying to charge me fines for this. So, I think it's a valuable thing for us to talk about. And that's all I have to say about that for now.
Well, now, even if we give them a month in advance, my guess is that still a month from now, we might have that 96-hour hold in place.
Absolutely.
So how are you going to tell us, how would we find someone? They've already returned the book and it's in the shed.
Right.
How are you going to do that, Jeff?
So we can, we have, again, with notice, as long as we're doing this far enough in advance, we can modify the grace period days and or modify we can't do it for items that were checked out in the past, which is why a lot of this manual scrambling that we're doing around the past was because no one was anticipating this in February when a bunch of items were being checked out. So we can modify things going forward to modify those fines, but it would be easier for us to well in advance, like Mark's saying, let's identify a target date and then give us some chance to change the settings in the system to allow us to accommodate that. I also imagine that, absent a vaccine or some other large change in the world, that we will be continuing, or new science, about surface transmission on library materials, that we will be continuing at least a 72-hour quarantine period going forward. So that is going to complicate. You're 100% right. That's going to complicate everything for the foreseeable future for us.
I think there's another number that we've really never looked at before because it was never really of any materiality. But I suspect that, I don't want to call it revenue, but lost books. I think you're going to see a larger number of books that are just not returned and are billed and paid or billed and not paid. I think at some point we need to just be aware of that, because I think I suspect you're going to have more loss that way.
And it may well be. I mean, there is, we're being very generous about how we're looking at materials right now, because I cannot guarantee that we have had the lock on the circulation processes that we normally have. I have a bunch of people who are involved in these checkout and check-in processes that don't do this. They are much more expert now than they were a couple months ago. But really, when we're in there in the library, it's all hands on deck. So, we're what is traditionally handled by absolutely a group of experts is being handled by a group of knowledgeable enthusiasts as well as our experts. So, that and the sheds and the whole, people weren't aware of how to return things. I think most of our patrons have done this long enough that they've kind of gotten into the cycle. But I am very, very well aware that we asked people to hold on to things for a long time. We had people move away in the middle of the pandemic. They're like, I have these books. You're not open. What do I do with these things? So we were able to do some individual things for those people who contacted us, but there may well be people who just never contacted us. So there's going to be some of that. It's just, I think 2 years from now, there's going to be a period of weirdness that will be like, oh, that's in that period. we have to take a different look at that.
I just am saying if we lose 5,000 in fines, I don't want to lose sight of maybe we have 10 or 15 of lost books that we're trying to bill for, and like, let's stop focusing on the fines if there's receivables for books. I mean, I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but it's something that I think the board should be kept aware of if it becomes any kind of a material issue.
Very good. And I think, right, yeah, I'm far more concerned about people who lose or damage materials than I am about the fines, and you're right about the material.
Can I just say something about that now? Recently, I think around December-ish, we actually put a line item in the revenue section for lost books that are paid. It used to be a contra asset. When we would receive money, we would debit the expense of books, but now it is strictly going into a revenue stream. So every month you can see what we've received in payment for lost or damaged books.
We don't have a receivable booked for the billed and unpaid, do we?
I don't have it. I believe there must be something on Sierra where because I don't have access to Sierra. That's
we know what that is, yes, but no, we don't book it in the financials. No.
Right. It's not in the financials, but I assume, Jeff, that it is something that you can look up. Yeah.
We know what it is. You bet.
So Jeff, at your directors meetings, has it been discussed at this point by Upper Hudson? It hasn't come up at board meetings, but in terms of what kind of guidance is coming forward to the libraries, is there any consensus forming in terms of
as far as fines are concerned? Well, yeah, like herding cats, right? So I think most libraries are not assessing fines right now, even if they're being put into the system, they're being cleared out. There will not be a unified. I can guarantee you. I will be stunned if we come to a point where we say, okay, all the libraries who charge fines, which we already weren't at consensus at, we'll turn them back on a certain day. Albany doesn't charge fines, so this is no different for them than they're at normal business practice as far as fines are concerned. So there are many libraries like that, and there are libraries like us. And I think it's I think it's worth discussing is what level of normalization would we need to see before we would feel comfortable assessing fines to our public. And I think that's I think Mark's on it with some kind of I'll pick a target date. That would be very soothing to our public if the board were just to come out and say December, November 1st, whatever the date is, that we can shoot for it as a target date.
I have a question, Jeff. You had mentioned about the adjustments you could make. So for example, on a 2-week book, one of the 2-week long books, can you make an adjustment so that the checkout period is actually 17 days to accommodate the 2 or 3 days it's going to be sitting in the shed? Or is that the kind of adjustment you can make, or is there something else?
We can make that adjustment, though that doing it from a system level as opposed to an individual level would be a little bit complicated, but doable. The way we would imagine it handling is that we would adjust the grace period days. But unfortunately, the way the system works is we could say, we're going to give 7 grace days. So there's a due date, and then there are no fines assessed for 7 days after that item comes back. However, the way the system works is if it's returned on the 8th day, 8 days of fines are assessed. It's not 1 day of fines on the 8th day. You know what I mean? If it's returned after that, so we can accommodate our quarantine period, give a couple extra days just to be sure. There's a weekend or something. We want to make sure that people don't miss it. Backdate check-ins to the last open day that we had, but there's still going to be, that's just the way the system works. And there's not a way for us to fix that. So there's a couple different ways we can attack this. We can get creative about it. I think it's just, we need to start getting that built into the way our loan rules are working.
Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts on the fine policy? I mean, I really do think we should set a target date, even if we don't publicize it right away, just so you have something to shoot for. I mean, I don't think, we're not doing weekend service at all. Where we at least Saturday service in the summer. We were doing, it's reduced, understandably. I think it'd be okay to say, listen, we're not going to do fines until December 1 at the very earliest. I mean,
I'd put your deadline before the holiday season. I'd go with November 1 just to get it done before the holidays rather than in the midst of the holidays.
yeah, that's fine too. November is fine too. Yeah, I think you should just kind of have a target date that we work with. So you guys can plan, and then we can get word out when we have to. Really, a lot of time, make sure we explain the 96-hour thing, a couple different times, couple different ways, and explain that we're not going to do fines until November 1, if that's the date.
I think that would be reassuring to many members of the public.
And I would market it or advertise it, get the word out as soon as possible that it's coming up.
Well, listen, if conditions change, the board can always kick that date further back. But
right.
I think having a date that it's not before would be very reassuring to people.
Okay, other thoughts on that on the board level or staff
Do we
level?
need a motion for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Does anyone want to move that? I can move it.
I'll make a motion to reinstitute fines on November 1st, 2020.
Great.
I second.
Michelle, Mary, thanks. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. So November 1 we'll use as the date.
Maybe we could leave this item on the agenda every month and just get a quick update, whether there's any changes, just something really quick so we know where we're going with it.
Yep, that's a good idea. We'll note that, definitely. Okay, great. Emergency authorizations, Jeff?
So back in May, the board authorized the ability for me to change certain policies: the patron conduct policy, the borrowing policy, the library card policy, and the library safety plan. So that ends at this board meeting. So when we made that decision, it was at the end of the August board meeting. The question is that something we would like to reauthorize and continue? And then what time frame would you like to continue that if you were to choose that?
Do you need it?
I think I might, as we're going to be discussing the reopening of the building, and there's going to be things in it like that masks are required to enter the building. I think that's not in our patron conduct policy, and it's difficult for me to have to come. Well, it's difficult for the library that we would have to come back to the board once a month to reauthorize that. So
can we do that reopening discussion first before we have this discussion?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll pen that for the reopening. You want to do that? Let's do the reopening now, then we can come back and do or you want to do the Wi-Fi piece quick?
I think the Wi-Fi piece is pretty quick. We'll know right away. So on page 31, we have a quote from Adirondack Cabling. We worked with them to provide the wiring for the equipment that's necessary to provide Wi-Fi at Five Rivers. It was less than this because the conduit was less complicated and the run was shorter. So that was in the 4,500-ish or so to run that, to get that going. It's a one-time cost to get that equipment put in. Because it's not our building, we can't just run Ethernet cable. It has to be running conduit and done to the specifications of the owners of the building. So we don't have the ability to do that sort of professional wiring. So we contract that out. So this is question to the board is, would you authorize me, because over my authorization limit, to have Adirondack Cable come in and install the necessary wiring so that we can put Wi-Fi over at cover the playground over at Town Hall to give us another area of Wi-Fi coverage outside the building.
So I do have a question, like why wouldn't the town do that? But but that's fine. I think we talked about making that Wi-Fi available as much as possible. So at some point we should talk to the town about, a reciprocal deal there. So this would allow the Wi-Fi people to go to the playground and use the Wi-Fi of the library.
Correct.
And into the parking lot as well, I would assume, somewhat in the parking lot.
Probably that side of the building, and then it would probably go over to the parking lot. That we're going to run it over to that side of the building. Because what has to happen we're not going to drop. The proposal is that we wouldn't be dropping a new internet line into the town. We'd be bridging from the library's existing Wi-Fi. So there's no monthly ongoing cost for this. There's not a new internet service. It's that we bridge our internet service over there, similarly to the way we did drop a line in at the town pool, but then we bridge to cover multiple areas at the town park. We bridge that out further and further with equipment. So this run goes from one side of the building that faces us, that allows them to repeat our signal, and then get it outside on the other side of that building.
Okay.
I think that's a valid point though, Mark. Why, if there's been shown a need to have Wi-Fi at the town park playground, why is the town not paying for their own Wi-Fi?
Well, so to just break this down a little bit, the providing Wi-Fi into the community is one of the services that we like the library to be providing. That's first, and the town is not set up to be able to provide public Wi-Fi, to provide Wi-Fi to the public. That's not their mission. It's not what the town does. They have their own IT infrastructure that is internal to the town. They're worried about things like the police and in town operations. So when we worked with them at the pool first at the town park, the library provides that. So it's a popular service. People like the fact that our Wi-Fi is out and in the community. I think it's another area. We try not to provide Wi-Fi in places that create a gathering, but rather serve the people of our community that
Already gathered, yeah.
that are already gathered there. So that's another place that we could do that. And again, because there's not a high ongoing expense, because we don't have to have a new internet drop there. It's using our existing internet drop from the building. So it's the mission of the library is to provide information access. This is one of the ways we do that. The one-time expense, we could have a discussion with them about that, but the library has traditionally borne those costs. This one is just a little bit higher because of the complexity of the installation.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, if we're paying for the service, and that's, I think, consistent with our mission, it seems like they could at least share the cost of the installation, if nothing else.
Okay.
They're getting the credit for it, so to speak.
And I assume they don't have Wi-Fi in the town hall building, or do they?
I
Or
don't know if they provide it into for their meeting rooms. I wish I knew the answer. That would be a good answer. I don't have that answer. I know that there was a desire to provide it at the town park, and that was not going to go unless the library was the one to provide it. So,
but in this case, wouldn't putting it in benefit the town hall also, because they'd be able to tap in?
I don't know. Considering that building, I'm not 100% convinced. We are absolutely not wiring this to provide Wi-Fi on the inside of that. That's there may be circumstantial Wi-Fi that is available in that building in certain areas, but it's not our mission to provide Wi-Fi to the whole inside of town hall. So.
Hey, can I ask you a question? Is this you said it's a one-time cost?
Yes.
And so this is for multiple years, or is it a yearly contract? How does it work?
It's one time. So this is wiring. This is the wiring to put the wiring in the building that allows us to transmit our signal over to the other side. So it's not the ongoing cost for the Wi-Fi is already included in the cost of our Wi-Fi that we have for the library building. So it's just because it's so proximate to the library, we could probably get to the same thing by putting an enormous tower on top of the library and then broadcasting our Wi-Fi signal out with a very strong Wi-Fi repeater. It's just that we're not putting a tower on top of the library. Yeah. So this just allows us to bridge over to their building, shoot through the building, and then have a hotspot point on the outside of the.
So it's equipment installation, basically, like correct. Wiring. You're right. Okay, thank you.
Well, I agree philosophically with asking the town to share in the cost. I think that asking the town for $3,000 at this point in time, when they are probably taking a significant revenue hit on the sales tax line alone in their budget, I think it's asking them a question that they just simply cannot say yes to. It's $3,000. I think that we either want to do this at the playground or we don't. Believe me, I agree with you philosophically, but I think the timing is poor to raise that question.
I don't want them to take credit for it. That's all too.
I mean, I think here's the deal. There's a lot of credit we had, right? So this is an extremely popular service. It was when we provided it at the pool. I had a lot of contacts from people who never stepped foot in the library. And the one service they get from us is, oh, I saw free library Wi-Fi at the town pool. Thank you so much. Unsolicited thanks for that. So it is a service that is absolutely appreciated. I think right now it was one of the primary physical services that the library provided while the library was closed. We provided Wi-Fi out in the community. If I could have Wi-Fi everywhere in the community, I would, but that's not within our power or our mission to be able to do. So I think philosophically, we want to have Wi-Fi signal for the public,
right, everywhere.
And the question is this an acceptable cost, a one-time cost for us to be able to bridge that over and put that over at town hall?
Sure. I'm not knowing too much about the background of it, but I would. I'd say yes this time, and then if we're going to be setting up other spots, I'm not sure where they might be, that we pursue some collaboration. And maybe there's a little plaque outside the playground saying Wi-Fi provided.
You say signage is good.
Yeah, the nice part is that the system broadcasts out as free library Wi-Fi. That's the name of our internet connection, so it really advertises itself. But the town was absolutely happy to put a sign up at the town pool that said, Wi-Fi provided by Bethlehem Public Library. So
we're all part of the same town.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's true.
I make a motion to approve the payment of the invoice to Adirondack Cabling to enable the run the lines for free wireless over in the playground by the town hall.
A second.
Okay, great. Thanks. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into the reopening discussion, I think, at this point. And we talked about the long-range planning enough. I think we talked about the filters.
Right.
Let's get into the reopening public discussion.
Okay, so basically, you saw in my documents on page 32 in the board packet, a couple foundational questions. How that gets implemented, I am perfectly happy to do once the assumptions are there. The practicalities about how this gets implemented, I think we can do very quickly. But one of the questions, my first foundational question from which a lot of this bridges is right now, as soon as we opened, we were trying for maximum redundancy. We had imagined that if the team went down, we started with 3 teams, quickly found that was untenable. That simply a third of the staff is simply not enough people to do anything with. And so we moved to 2 teams where half the staff is on one team and half the staff is on the other team, and they don't see each other. Right? So with half the staff, we are not able to provide service from 9 to 9. We basically, if you look at the hours of curbside pickup, generally speaking, that's based around a single shift, that shift being 11 to 7. There's a little bit of a variation depending on which staff person, 10 to 6, or still do some 1 to 9 to cover some of the evening work and work before we open. But basically that 11 to 7 was identified as the single shift that if we had to provide service across to our public, allows for some evening hours early enough in the day. And so there's a lot of questions from the public that said, why is it that you're not 9 to 9? It's because with half the staff, I can really only establish, do 1 shift of work at the library. There's just not enough people to cover 12 hours a day. So if that is philosophically important, do we feel that that level of redundancy is necessary given our current circumstance? Then that from that drives some procedures about how we would physically begin to reopen the library for browsing. So lots of organizations are there already. I think we can be there fairly quickly. The browsing experience is not going to be the same that people are used to having in the library. It's going to be a different world when people come back into the library. It's okay. I think most people understand that. But adding services right now with half of a staff is not workable without being able to drop something off. And that was Michelle's point to say, I was surprised to hear that people didn't want curbside to stop if we opened the library. If we open the library, I think there's a significant portion of the population that still would want curbside to exist. So, curbside is a lot of work. I would love to never do another curbside drop off again. So given that, is that those two teams, is that still necessary? Is that necessary for going forward? That's my first foundational question. I need some guidance from all of you, and that's why we put that in the document. The second is, or do we staff to some staffing level that we need? How do we get to say, there's a maximum cap on the number of staff that are anytime in the building? Lots of our staff, there's a lot of staff people, but many of them are very, very, very part-time, right? So they're all over the schedule, and they're designed to allow us to cover 12 hours a day and 7 days a week. So can we bring in more than, that we lose the separation of those two teams and allow for, if it's not 9 to 9, maybe it's 10 to 8, or some kind of larger coverage of our traditional hours and those services. So that's my question. That's the one that if we know the answers to that, then a lot of the answers about how we go about reopening just sort of naturally fall into place.
I guess, Jeff, before we talk about how we staff it, I guess, what are you viewing right now as the most important services to try to relaunch?
Right. So the by numbers, the biggest demand service that people want is to be able to come in and browse the collection and check out their materials in the library. For all that, book bundles are great, and pop-up is great, and curbside pickup is incredibly popular. It does not replicate that service. One. Two is the computers, right? So the physical access to the computers in the library, printing services, faxing, copying, and we'll bundle all the things together and talk about sort of physical, in-person IT things. It's great. We just talked about the Wi-Fi. Having the people who are using our Wi-Fi and have been since March. Great, if you have a device. Those two things are a little bit in tension right now. Where should our focus be? I think those are the two physical services. The easiest physical service for us to provide would be simply to open the doors to physical browsing. I think we could easily limit to some number of different libraries that are like us around the area, have established those limits. And we would just establish a limit, a number of people that are allowed in the building at any given time, and come in and browse the collection, much like going to the grocery store. You come in, pick out some books. I think, one of the things we lose from that is right now we have a pretty tight control over hand hygiene for our staff. We know about washing and sanitizing our hands and making sure those collections. We accept that if we open the doors and people come in to the collection, we are accepting that cross-contamination. Even if we try to say, if you touch a book, put it on this cart, we quarantine that item and shelve it again in 96 hours. We just accept that service transmission is not the biggest mode of transmission in the libraries, and we just accept that cross-contamination is going to happen. It already happens a little bit, but we don't have as tight control as we have right now. That it's harder to establish hand hygiene with the public, right? So we wouldn't have a health screening for the public like we do with the staff as they come into the building. So that's the easier service to implement. A more complicated service is the physical computer access in the library. Certainly can be done in ways that entail that. Unfortunately, the problem with that is that the folks that are using the computers will be in the library for much longer periods of time. So imagine a 2-hour, come in, sit at the library, use the computer for an hour or 2 hours. There's a long time to be in there. And then we have really quite close physical contact with mice and keyboards, a bunch of different ideas about how we would handle that, from anywhere from saran wrap to switching out keyboards and mice, and then making sure that there's some time in between each of those appointments to allow for us to wipe down the system, to wipe down the mice and keyboards and printers and all of that. But I think we can handle the practicalities of that. But the level of support that people need on those computers makes social distancing with the staff from folks that are using the computers very difficult. So, you know, we are used to being able to, if someone's on the computer and they're having a problem, which many people are, which is why they're using the computer in the library, right? We come up next to them, we say, oh, I need to take over the mouse and the keyboard for a minute. Doing that from 6 feet away with a laser pointer is going to be more challenging. And we are certainly not going to be providing the level of service for support for those that maybe, that we are used to, that our patrons are used to getting for those services. So I had originally had conceived that it would be computer use as the thing that I really can't replicate in any other way. We put Chromebooks out, and those are finally out and available, and they're running around in the community. That's great. I don't know that that replicates a supported, fully functioning computer with printer and a staff person that is able to help and assist. But I don't know that we have a way to provide that level of service right now. You know, and so that was, we originally thought we would just open up the lobby of the library. We have the computers. If you come by the library, they're out in the lobby right now. Because we said it will open the lobby of the computer and support them out there. A, the airspace is tighter in the lobby, and B, how do we do this level of support that we want to provide to the people? That's a big question. So, I mean, those two services are the services that are, I think, most desired.
Could you do it in phases and do the browsing first and then see how that goes, how the staff works, and then phase in, if it makes sense, the computer use after, and perhaps fewer computers or however you decide to maintain them. But could you do it browse first and then computer use second?
Absolutely. And I think that's, you know, so I think I had a brief discussion about this with Mark and Michelle last week as we were setting the agenda, and I think it's a good discussion for us to have now. With curbside being as popular it is, I don't think we can do curbside at the same time as we are having people into the library browsing. People get stuck in our parking lot. If you get caught in a large curbside time, I don't know if anybody's ever been stuck in the parking lot when we're backed out onto Borthwick. That happens. So I think those two things have to be at mutually separated times. The question would be, and I think we can answer this pretty easily, do we separate it by time? Do we say, oh, browsing is available in the morning from 9 or 9:30 to 12:30 or 1 as we approach, and then curbside takes over from 1 to the rest of the day? Do we divide it that way, or would we say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, curbside, Tuesday, Thursday is browsing? You know, I don't know all of these are imperfect solutions. Someone is going to be extremely angry and disenfranchised no matter what we decide, but I think we can make those decisions. I just think it would be very difficult for me, absent just switching out a couple days a week to do browsing with the current staff, if we want to have those two teams and continue that that level of redundancy in the staff. You know, there's no reason we have to have that, and I think the staff that are there, that are on team, are really working very hard, and I think all of us are exhausted by the time we're done with that week. So it's you know, it would be easier on us if we staff to a level of staffing, but we do lose that separation, that redundancy in those two teams. So that's
Can
just.
Can I go back a step?
Yep.
For our libraries that are open, do they have differences in their building structure or something that makes it more conducive to opening? What are they doing? How is there anything that we can learn from their models?
Oh, we're in consultation with them a lot. So the closest models for us, of course, are the East Greenbush Library and the Colony Library. I think we can do that, any or all of that. You can do appointments. You can limit the number of people that are allowed in the library. We can handle that those are almost more simple than how many staff people do we want to have in the building at any given time, and that I think is that's the hard question. So I think that we have a lot to learn. I think we can do it safely, but all of you, except for Charmaine, have been toured through the library and able to see the density of the staffing areas. Staffing was never really designed into the building that exists, and the complexity of providing a socially at all socially distanced workplace for the staff is really going to be a major challenge going forward.
Okay, all right. So that's the big challenge, is the density of the staff.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
go to a full team to be able to provide the additional services. Okay, now
Correct.
I'm getting the gist. I really was not making that connection.
I'm sorry, that's my fault. Yeah, it is that building. If you think about, for those of you that have been in the workroom, back sort of right behind the circulation desk, there's cubicles back there, and people are right on top of each other, and that is where much of the work of circulation happens back there already. When we're doing curbside, and you can imagine where the hold shelves are, right behind the circulation desk and the back side of that wall, and down on another wall, and down another 2 more walls now. It's a fiction for us to say that we're socially distanced when we are providing curbside service. We're masked. That's what we do as opposed to that, but we're definitely closer than we ought to be providing that service. There's just no way for us to do that. We're trying to be as safe as possible, but we're packed in there. So in order to provide service from 9 to 9, or to do what we're doing plus add computers on in the hallway, that was the thing that kind of finally broke me, was I can't do that with with half the staff that I have available. And many of them are part-time. They're not available. They have full-time jobs other places. So they're kind of evenings and mornings in different places. I can't do it. I can't add services right now with half the staff. So the thing that would have to go is those 2 teams. And right now rates are low. So maybe we'd say this is not important. That's why you saw my recommendation is that we staff to a density that we're comfortable with of the total number of staff people in the building. But I can't do that and have people separated into 2 teams that are completely mutually. That is just, it's great. I can't make that work. I can't, I literally, for the people that are in the building, I can't get, there's no more juice to squeeze from that. I need
All
more.
right, let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Where we are now, are we in phase 2 of the plan that we put out there way back? We're way back in our lives now, way back. We had a phased plan for reopening. Are we fully in phase 2 now?
Yeah, we're fully into that curbside. Yeah.
Okay, so theoretically, we would want to go to phase 3. Was phase 3 supposed to be where we were opening the building?
I think that's the next, and again, world's different than when we wrote that document, but yes, I think that next phase where we begin to open up the building, I think we thought that was going to be a lot faster than it ended up being, but that is right where we are. The malls are open, right? It is more people are comfortable, not everybody, more people are comfortable being in gathering spaces like that. But that's exactly the nature of the question, is that the library is a congregator. So something like public meetings or tutoring, that's not coming back shortly. That's not my next phase, right? And there's going to be implications to that as the schools begin to reopen as well, right? The sort of the library as hangout spot. I love community space, community gathering space. This is more library as grocery store. There's things in there. You come in, you get your things, you go to the checkout desk, you check them out, and you leave. That is the library that is envisioned for this next phase.
All right. Well, I think what I hear you saying is that with curbside being important, and we don't want to reduce that, we have a lot with ebook content. I think I hear you saying that to move forward with browsing and or computers, there's virtually no way to keep 2 teams.
That's correct. And that's why you saw in my recommendations that we go to a fixed number of staff people and back into the number of the density of staff people that we want in a given time in the building. So
we make the leap to the 1 level of staffing, and then the next, I think what I hear you saying is the next challenge for you guys is how do you lay the staff out to do coverage? Are we still uncertain whether we're talking about 5 days a week, 7 days a week? We're talking about a full complement of staff, and how do we spread that in a way that's safe and yet provides mixed service times to the community?
Correct. And then one of the numbers I need to know is, as we reopen to the public, how does it in fact decrease the demand for curbside pickup? Will people in fact come to the library and come in and check their books out as opposed to using curbside pickup? That is a number that I do not have and we will need. And then we balance those services. It may eventually get to the point where we say, oh, curbside service is just Thursday afternoons. You know, maybe it's just that's when we do. And if we got to that point, we might be able to provide curbside as an also ran to our regular services. But right now, I don't know that. So
what do we want to provide with browsing? Okay, because is browsing literally like you can come in for an hour? We're really asking you to leave after an hour, or is it open for anything? It's okay for you to browse, pick up a book and sit in one of the chairs and read for 3 hours. What, I mean, we're not going to be police, I get it, but what are we looking for the public to do with browsing?
Yeah, there's no chairs, right? So they're gone. So
Okay.
This is not a space to come in and exist. This is a space to come in, perform the tasks that you need to perform and get out, right? So so that's the this next phase of library. You know, it's like going to the coffee shop used to be come in, sit down in the coffee shop, hang out with all your friends, and now it's get in there, get your coffee, get out and go. And that's the model that we would be reopening to. That's what I'm saying. This is not going to be the regular experience that people are maybe used to having in the library, but we absolutely, I think we can provide. You know, there aren't big COVID outbreaks right now happening with people in grocery stores. And I'm imagining that's sort of the model we would be under. People will come in, do their business, and then leave the library. So I think, yeah.
I'm sorry. You know, my sense is you wouldn't necessarily give people a time limit, but you keep count of who's in the building. You take away every single chair possible so that it's the understanding that you can't socialize basically. You're here to look at the collection and that, you know, the staff may be in a position of, you know, just intervening if there's some social distancing. If people start, I don't know, that's up on your decision of how people address people who try to yak or talk too closely or too long with somebody. But yeah, my sense is the chair, every surface that people could linger on in any way, shape, or form is gone, so that they, yeah.
Correct. And that's where right now that was one of the challenge. I don't want to out the library. One of the challenges at the library that's similar to us, some libraries that are similar to us, is that the challenge for the staff has literally been micromanaging the behavior of the public as they're coming into the building. And they've thought they weren't going to have to and have to, right? So is your mask, in fact, covering your nose while you're in the library? And then having those interactions with people as they're coming in, and absolutely limiting that to, you know, limiting the number of people that come into the library. I think we would start with 10 people in the building at any time, come in, you know, get what you're going to get and then get out. I would love to not have appointments. Many libraries have instituted appointments. I think that's kind of onerous for people. And that's basically just a way to say, I'm not interested in you coming in. But then if you don't do appointments, then people will end up waiting outside. And that also tends to annoy people. So all of these things will annoy somebody. But it's just, you know, I think there really is some significant level of demand on the part of the public to come into the building. I just wanted to discuss with all of you really it's the staffing challenge. It's how can I provide coverage for anything like a normal schedule that would allow us then to have browsing either on certain days or certain times of certain times of the day, every day. Yes.
Well, I'm just wondering, would it be possible to do something where you had Team A come in for 4 hours and then Team B comes in the second 4 hours, so you get your 8-hour day? Or does that not work because some staff does? Would that?
Yeah, we can cover a single shift. So that 8 hours we can cover very easily. And that's sort of what we're doing now. It's the 12 hours that makes it. It's when you add that extra shift. So no one person covers 12 hours in the day. It's those other 4 hours that that's the challenge, where we can't do that with half. I can't do 12 hours a day, 5 days a week with half the staff. The part-timers are absolutely integral to covering those evening shifts. If most of the full-time people are in during the day and a few of them are working at night, those part-time people are absolutely integral. And if the Wednesday night person is on Team B, that doesn't help me on Team A when it's Wednesday night, right? So there's only one person. That's why I was saying in my plan, we would have the part-time people come in and work their schedules and then staff to a level And some people,
Or you can change, I mean, you could change the schedule of the library to be not a 12-hour experience, right? So
Correct.
you could say we're gonna open at 10:30 or 11, and then we're gonna close at 6 or whatever, and then maybe have one night where you open at noon and, or, you know, go later or something.
Yeah.
You know, you can, I think people understand it's different now. So.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, let
it's
me
totally
ask you a
different now.
question, though.
I'm not convinced we need, my opinion, I cut out for a bit, I'm sorry, but my opinion is that I don't think we need to open the library yet, frankly. I think we should wait another month, frankly, before we do anything, Frank. That's where I am on it, but.
I anticipate a lot from the public, especially when the school opens and the library doesn't. I think that we're going to hear more and more from patrons and asking why other libraries in the system are open and we aren't. We have one of the largest buildings, and two, with, like I said, with schools opening and kids needing books, materials. I don't know. I just think you're going to hear more and more from the public that.
See, this is, it's not that I'm hearing the same thing too. I saw it on Nextdoor over the weekend. And the issue is they don't know. They're asking why. They're not being argumentative for the most part. It's like, can you explain to me why? Other people get on and say, all I can tell you is it's very complicated. You know, that's why I was saying, like, for me, the way I think, I need to see a chart. Show me the services. Show me, you know, before this is what we had for e-content. Now we have this much more. Before we never had curbside pickup. This is what we have. I think if you put down what the things we had before and the things we have now, how you used to get, somehow give a correlation and show what there is and give them an explanation of why we're not doing it yet. And that will help us make the decision about opening.
Yeah. One thing I saw, Jeff, in your report or your summary here, you talk about 25 people. Is that the people, the number of staff you would need?
Staff people, yeah.
That 25 max. So again, being new still, what I would feel, I won't even suggest, what I feel is if you feel like you want to attempt some kind of opening, that you do it with the 25 people. It's up to you. How do you finagle the schedule? It's not my gig. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what you would be covering with it, but making sure, ensuring the safety of those staff. And I would suggest you do some kind of browsing, preliminary browse opening. You know, I would definitely not do 12 hours. I agree with Mark. I think 12 hours is very generous at this point, but attempt some set of open hours, and then you figure out how you want to balance it against the curbside, whether it's every other day or a certain number of hours, but give a reasonable number of hours to start with a staffing level that you need to keep everyone safe, but keep the library open, and try it. But I wouldn't do the computer thing. I would try the browsing thing first.
All right, here's the part I'm still struggling with a little bit. Typically in the summer, we would be open 6 days a week. We're not usually open on Sundays, okay? And that's through August, okay? And this year we actually put it in through the first week or two of September because of where Labor Day falls. So typically it's 6 days a week right now. And we have between full-time and part-time staff. Theoretically, we have staff pre-COVID, pre-curbside, to cover 6 days a week. So I don't understand. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be argumentative. How are we struggling to cover like 40 hours a week? How do I go from 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, to I'm struggling to cover 40 hours?
Right. So the struggle is that we've cut that staff in exactly half, right? So there's half of them over here and half of them over here, and they don't see each other. There are staff people I haven't seen in 5 months, right? So they are supervised. We talk on Teams. There's a lot of communication, but I haven't physically seen them because we decided in the beginning that having a separate, having a redundant team, should one whole team get taken down and have to quarantine for 2 weeks, that we would be able to continue to provide the services of the library. So that's the challenge. And again, it's that the Wednesday night, the Wednesday night people may be on team A, and then some of the other folks are on team B. So it's that firewall that if we didn't have the firewall, I think we could figure out what the level of staffing is necessary to provide the services that we want to provide very easily. But we have to have more bodies in the library at any given time to be able to provide those services. And so that, in addition, the reason people are so very tired is one of my staff members said, I can tell whether it's a slow day because it's between 10,000 and 12,000 steps. Busy regular day is between 12,000 and 14,000 steps, and a busy day is over 14,000 steps. So it is because we're providing, curbside is literally so much. Every checkout is there are no easy checkouts. Every checkout is a difficult, made by hand thing, and that is the level where it's curbside. That's the work. Physically carrying.
So half staff really
Yeah.
is not sufficient to cover curbside. And that's what I think I'm hearing. Half staff is, I mean, the only reason you're at that staffing level for curbside is because of the safety issue, which I'm not saying that's the only reason. That's not important.
Yes,
we don't have enough staff to cover curbside.
Correct, and maintain that separation in teams. Those two mutually exclusive teams. We're doing it right now, but we are asking a lot of the people that are doing it. They're hustling. So so that's the question. I can't do what we're doing right now and say, oh, and then open up the whole mornings, open up and allow some browsing in the morning, and then keep curbside going until 7 or 8 at night with those two teams. So I think we can do this either way, but the philosophical question I need to know is that of interest and of value to the library to continue to have those two teams? If it is, then we could very easily institute some rotation of allowing browsing in the library and no curbside. So we would do curbside on some number of days and browsing on some other number of days, and we could provide that service, because browsing and checking out is super easy compared to carrying items out of the garage in the rain and taking those out to people. That is a super simple service, and I think we could handle that actually relatively easy for some curtailed schedule. But if we wanted to provide browsing in the morning, curbside in the afternoon, and continue both of those services as we see, which of the services are important and covering for much longer than an 8-hour shift is able to cover, then I can't do that at half staff. There's not enough people. There's not enough bodies to stretch that beyond the sort of single shift that they're working now.
Okay, wait a minute. Can I just ask if, I don't think this is what you said.
Okay.
If we wanted to keep, let's say, the hours that we're open now, let's say that's 11 to 7.
Yeah.
Okay. If we took the two separate teams and within those 11 to 7 hours, we said, okay, and 11 to 1 is browsing every day, and curbside is, what would that be? Like maybe 1:30 to 7 every day. If we split it and did it that way, would that give the staff some relief because they'd have some time with browsing?
The hope is that as people would be able, those comfortable coming into the library and could come in and browse and pick up their holds at the checkout desk, they're doing the walking. So the hope is that actually reduces the demand for curbside, and that we sort of have a natural transition away from curbside to where that becomes a very minor service. But if we were going to say, 9 a.m. in the morning, we start with browsing, and then we do that till 1, and then from 1 till 8 or 9, we do curbside pickup. I can't do those 10 or 12 hours. I can't do with half the staff. That's
not extending hours. We could perhaps split the days or split some of the days to see where the interest is with browsing.
Yeah, if we want to keep, yes, there's absolutely ways for us to do that, and I think we could do that. We absolutely could do that if maintaining those two teams is a desirable thing, and that's the question that I really need all of us to be thinking about.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. I feel like the plan that we originally came up with the two teams was a guess, right? I mean, we had no idea what curbside was going to be like.
Right.
We couldn't have predicted that, and I feel like we made the best decision based on what we were sort of hoping would happen. So also I feel like even if we all agree on, okay, now it's fine to reduce, the issue of the two teams, we still aren't going to be able to probably adequately predict how people are going to behave in a next phase of whatever it is. I mean, I think we have some ideas about people, but it's hard to tell how people are going to act that have been at their houses for all this time. So I think we can make a best guess, but I feel like we have to be willing to kind of recognize that doing that means that we have to be flexible and agree that it's time, there are time periods when we need to look at things and say, oh, this doesn't really work,
Right.
which I think is what you're doing now.
Right.
The 2 teams doesn't work, is what I'm hearing you say. For anything beyond what we're doing right now, and it sort of doesn't even work really right now. So I think, even though there's probably a mixed opinion across the board at this point, I think we have to at least address that.
Jeff, did I hear you say, and you may have said it in passing, that if you alternated days, for example, browse on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and curbside Tuesday, Thursday, and not the 12 hours, that you could do that with just the 2 teams?
I think, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Jeff, what would you have to do with the current service arrangement to make it manageable with the 2-team arrangement? Like, what would we have to scale back in terms of curbside pickup to make it not such a heroic effort? Because that may be it too, right? It may just be that we have tried to do too much.
I think it's the hope. My hope would be, and it's not the full reason, but one of the hopes is that if we can open up browsing and for people to come into the library, then that reduces the burden and need for it. And while there are some folks that are going to want to continue to do that, just their comfort level, I think the expectation of the community that we don't back away from that service completely, I think it could be contained to a schedule that makes sense. Right now, it's the only service model that we have, so everybody's doing that. And we could do a survey and ask people what they and we could try to suss out what those percentages might be, but we can also just play the game and they'll tell us what services they want us to be providing to them. I think there's enough knowledge for us to be able to, in some reason, make a reasonable guess at how to run a library in a relatively safe manner and allow people in the door to do browsing. I think we know that. I think there's enough experience around the system. I think around the country. I think we can borrow from them and do that in a way that reasonably safe, especially given the condition that New York is in.
So what's the trigger to shut it down, right? So, is it like a 3% transmission rate or a 5% transmission rate, or is it a school trigger? Like, what's the trigger? I mean, I appreciate Michelle's comment about the school is going to force, demand, because as the school opens up, people, there's going to be some additional demand for services. I still think they can be mostly with curbside, but if you want to do, I guess, as long as we understand that if we're allowing people in the building, there's a time, we're going to have to be able to get together and shut it down at some point if it's, if we have outbreaks. Second is I think a lot of people aren't going to come in the building, frankly. So I think, we have an elderly town pretty much, and I'm not sure people are going to go back to the library, frankly. I think they like the curbside stuff. And I think we're going to know that yet. It's going to be unless we study this for like 6 months, which I don't think we have, we're not going to really know what the patterns are going to be. So I'm okay if you really carefully open the library, or you do it 1 or 2 days a week to start. But I think it's going to be I think we just don't know what kind of reaction. You might be overstaffed. You might have no one there, or a couple of people there, So it's hard to know. I'm totally okay with the going to, like, not going to 12 hours though. Like, I think 11 to 7 is fine. And people don't expect the library to be open until 9 and open at 9. I think I'm okay with that for a while. Although I would like to bring back in September or earlier, like a Saturday, just because I think you might be losing people that would normally come on the weekend. They normally come on a Saturday morning or would come because they can't get there during the week. So I would like to have a random Saturday worked in there at some point to check that out too.
Yeah.
I like Mark's idea of like the limited hours, and then whether you alternate or offer both the browsing and the curbside, not at the same time,
Yeah.
and start out maybe fewer days browsing and more. I'm not sure. Again, that's up. I would leave that to you for your professional judgment. But I think Mark's right. I'm not going back to a gym, quite frankly, for quite a while, and I think there'll be some people who are not used to curbside and will want to pick up their books in their car. And then there'll be some people who would like to go browsing. So I wouldn't want to tax your staff by saying we have to have both services at the same time, but offer each service at a different time for a reasonable amount of time and see what happens.
Jeff, what's your
like,
sense of a lot of the staff's feelings about returning and opening up the building? And
I think the staff is full of people, and there are people that feel all the way across the spectrum. There are people who are absolutely comfortable who say, get people back in here, and then I can stop walking all day long back and forth with these bags of books, getting on the phone all day and doing that. And I have people who are absolutely terrified of the library acting as an aggregator and bringing not just the staff, but also large numbers of people together. I think that's, I think we have all of that, as I imagine every organization does. I don't think we're any different than it is. Maybe we're a little bit more risk averse than your average organization. I think we are service driven rather than profit driven. But we understand that there are services that we're not able to provide right now that kills us. That's true. But I think at the same time, trying to balance the safety of both the staff and the community. With people who, again, across the community have that same range of feelings, that same range of, I don't understand. Me and I just want to browse the books. I'd come in there tomorrow if you let me. To people who are, thank you for this, what I'm comfortable with, make sure they don't want to roll down the window in their car and talk to the person 8 feet away who's trying to direct them. We have all of that, and we're trying to serve all of those people.
Yeah, my biggest concern right now is for the people who are of the public who are comfortable coming into the library, the experience in the library is going to be so different than what it was before that you're going to spend all of your time policing them, right? Don't group with all your friends right from the neighborhood who you haven't seen in ages and have long conversations, right? Don't hang out, don't. All of these things specifically to a group that is willing to do all of these things, right? And I'm just not seeing the ROI, frankly, on the effort. I totally understand the issue we're having with maintaining curbside pickup, and I want us to solve that problem, right? Because working everybody ragged is not the answer. So if we need to scale back on hours or days for curbside pickup, we should do that. I'm also really waiting to see how parents decide on schooling decisions for September. I mean, if 80% of the town decides to keep their kids home, right, that's going to tell you an awful lot about who's willing to come into the library and who's not.
I think that I agree with a lot of what Lisa said about, trying to be open and to try some of these things that maybe are a little bit distasteful to us. Harmeet, I agree with what you're saying. I also think that one question that I have even in moving forward is, I think curbside is so popular that literally if we did 3 days of curbside a week and 2 of browsing, you might still have the same volume of curbside, but just jammed into 3 days. I think there is a large proportion of people that are going to stick with curbside. But until we try some of this, we're not going to have the statistics to throw back at people. I want to also say that I think it's really important to get some weekend hours in, and I do not think one Saturday morning a month is enough. That's going to be a huge criticism of anything that we do if we don't put some significant weekend time in there, just because people just can't get there necessarily during the week. I think that's a consideration that I would hope that we would put on the table somehow.
I have also a question about what kind of equipment you might need, like the personal protective equipment, if you open the library up to browsing.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of the sort of the barriers between the public and the staff erected. We have not yet put much due to availability, all of the barriers between the staff workstations. We've been trying to provide that social distancing in the workstations by spreading the staff out across the whole library. So every study room right now is somebody's workspace. All the boardroom and the community room and all of those rooms that people are used to having access, the tech room and the studio are places where the staff are working. And then we provide social distancing through shifts, right? So through, if someone's working these 4 hours and another person's working these 4 hours, they can occupy the same space, but not be in the same space at the same time. So, but if we I think it would be impossible to have the entire staff in the library, especially at midday when the shifts cross over, and have all of those people in all their traditional workspaces. That is not going to be the truth anytime soon.
Well, I also meant when they interact with the public, if someone's browsing, does someone need a face shield? Does someone need, that kind of.
I think we're good. We have a lot of gloves, a lot of masks. We have face shields for all the staff. I think if the staff, we were able to print our own face shields on the 3D printer. So if we liked face shields, we might invest in more professional grade face shield as we were interacting with. I think we're good with our PPE as necessary in the library. The question would be, it's just body load in proximity to each other as they provide those services.
So at this point, what do you need from us? And decision-wise, and
right. So there we are. So we can. I want to make it clear that we can, keeping to 2 teams, absolutely provide for a browsing experience for some people with those limited hours that we've been talking about on maybe certain days of the week. Mary's idea of the Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I too fear that curbside will then be jammed into those. But again, we don't know until it happens, and I don't want to not do something out of fear of what could happen. I think the larger philosophical questions of when we do this. I think there's so basically that. Is that 2-team model still necessary? Was our thinking at the time? Is it still necessary? Do we need to bring back the staff people that are able to be there, and then just a comfortable level of folks in any time where we can keep as much distance as possible and not have too many people occupying the same workspaces. That and then the when, right? So how soon do we want to have that?
From our discussion tonight, I don't believe that you have to maintain the 2 teams. It seems like you could get rid of that firewall, as you called it. And I know you mentioned about there's just not enough space in traditional workspace to have the whole team there, but it is a large building and several rooms aren't being used. Could people not move around in that way?
We've already taken a lot of that over. So yes, absolutely. We would expand that out. I think we'll still get to some points during some days when the staff load might be just too high, and then I would take those people that are best able to work remotely and have them work remotely. Just say set the level of the number of staff people at a level that I'm comfortable being able to maintain appropriate social distance as much as possible in the building, and then still have some remote work for some jobs.
I think you could do full staff and include Saturdays, and possibly that takes care of where to put everyone. I'm still a little foggy on the reasoning that we're still maintaining the 2 teams. I assume it's just the safety issue, and that's not a small issue, but it does. Yeah, it does seem like you could bring more people than just team A or just team B. And to Mary's comment earlier, I think curbside is so vastly popular because that's the only way people can get books. If the library were open, I would anticipate a reduction in curbside pickup, but that's just my guess.
I feel like the question of when really depends on how long it would take you to put together a plan and kind of get everybody trained, and then also how long does it take to also tell the public what the plan is? because you have to kind of build that into, you can't just turn it on and expect everybody to follow the rules right away, because we know people don't do that. So
Yeah, I agree. There's got to be a public education effort that's extensive, and also, we can be your advocates as well too, and out there, but that just talks about the when. And that's got to be an extensive effort, I think, because people will be, get complaints no matter what you do, but the more education you do up front, you get less complaints.
Jeff,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jeff, originally, if I'm not mistaken, we had 3 teams, right?
We did.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we considered going back to 3 teams? But how do I say this? You'd always, instead of having 50% of staff or 100% of the staff, you do 2/3 staff.
Yes,
And
and
a rotation of the 3.
You got it. And so you're that's very close to what I put in my document, which is go to the number of staff people that we need to provide the service that we're providing, and then carve off some number of people, and say you're working from home today. And that's a little less formalized, I think, than the 2/3. The 2/3 rotation that you're imagining. That's another way to get to exactly that same place. Provide some folks that are out at a time and come back in to cover.
But it does something to address the density issue, which is a big deal. So we don't have to go down to 50, but we don't have to go up to 100 either.
Yeah, no, and I wouldn't propose that we should. I think that's why, if we look at the number of people that I have the number of staff people that I have in the building and limit that, then it makes those other scheduling decisions actually pretty easy. So
I'm also mindful that, given the education people spoke about and just getting this all in place, we're also going into the fall when they're also talking about, other germs and viruses being around. So I think it's just we have to be very mindful of levels in the community, which I know you would be, but.
And I think that, so to get back to Mark's question of the triggers or switches, I think we could have a trigger or switch. I think we could collapse back to what we're doing right now if infection rates go up, and we can talk about that number would be, the governor set out the 5 and 10% infection rates for the, you're definitely open, can be open, and then I think for schools. There's no similar guidance for libraries. It's just not coming. We're small potatoes compared to the problems that people are having right now. But I think we could collapse back very easily to what we're doing right now. We are the experts of this now. We can do this. And we are asking a lot of people, but I think it is possible for us to do what we're doing right now. Should infection rates go back up, but not astronomically high, I think we could provide curbside pickup and the level of service that we're providing right now quite easily. And I think it's just that I think I'm beginning to hear, and I think value your circles, your social circles, and what you're hearing from people is the time, are we being the right amount of cautious, or are we being overcautious about when the library ought to open up? And there's some factors that affect into the library. To get to that question, Mary, of why, in the grocery store, they don't expect everything to come back in 28 days, right? That stuff leaves in one direction and it goes out. And as well, it's the hang time, right? Places where you have hang time are less hang timey, and I think the library will be less hang timey than it has been. So
yeah, what are they doing on museums? I heard that. They're not. They are open.
Yeah, many museums are open. I think the ones that have outside, we can just tell from our museum passes, they're beginning. This realm project was literally reopening libraries, archives, and museums. Like, this is what they're looking at.
Yeah.
But they're opening for like 10 people in a library. I mean, really, really low numbers. Yeah.
It's all about reducing the density of people, because the risk is humans, right? The risk is not, we are being very careful with our materials. I think generally speaking, the risk is people, not stuff.
Right, it's a long time.
We just went to Hildene this weekend, And while there was a bit of a wait, each group, like couple or group of four, had to wait a few minutes to get into the building. So there was staggered entry, but there was definitely more than 10 people. There were quite a few people. There was a beautiful day, so people were out and about. But you know, they had markers on the floor of which direction to go in through the museum, and it wasn't a problem. It was pretty seamless, actually. But the library was closed, so I couldn't get my my museum passes.
Yeah, but like the Albany History of or in on Washington Avenue, that's open. You think? On Washington Avenue, the Albany Institute of History. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think, like in Albany County, where we are, are we an outlier as far as museums, libraries, archives? Is the State Museum open? I don't think so, right?
Right.
The State Library is not open, right? It's not really, people don't browse there really, but still,
Not that
right.
library.
Right.
But Colony is open, East Greenbush, and was there a third, Jeff?
Well, there's libraries that are maybe a little less analogous. So of the larger libraries, Troy, Colony, and East Greenbush are open.
Troy.
Bethlehem, Cleveland, and Albany remain closed. So that's the big six.
Right.
There's a lot of other libraries around, but those would be the ones that would be similar to us enough to draw some conclusions from.
Yeah,
Well,
there's no value here to being at the bleeding edge, right? This is not a technology race. I'm perfectly fine being in 4th place of 6.
Me too. Exactly.
5th place.
Right.
Well, out of the written response, I received about a dozen written response, 12 exactly, written responses in questioning just patrons that I know of, do you think we should open or not? And only 2 out of the 12 said that they would not return to the library. Everyone else had indicated that they would like to see the library all open and would return if the buildings were open to the public.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're envisioning the opening that we're talking about. But until we do it,
No,
I'm not pushing one way or another, but people definitely do not envision a library with no rooms to study in, no chairs, and go in and just do your business. So
Right.
actually the responses that I received were limited access to browse and check out a book.
yeah.
I think until we do a large scale, if you survey, you can't really get a sense of the whole public. And my sense is people might respond to, let's say it's 10 people at a time. So it's kind of like, I've only driven by Trader Joe's, but I've seen the lines outside of it. So if someone says, well, I only have an hour to go to the library and I'm now standing outside waiting for someone else to come out. I mean, that might be, so the number of people you allow in will be up to you. But I think the limited number of people allowed in, if someone feels, oh, the library's open, I'm going. And they realize, again, it's not this experience that some people have mentioned, but also that I have to wait even just to get in. So.
Yeah, and the libraries that are think that is a bigger negative than it should be, set up appointments, right? So they will set up appointments with people and they sort of book their time ahead of time and they come in at certain times. I think that provides quite a barrier. I would rather not do that. I think that provides a big barrier. It's similar to where we've gone with our curbside philosophy. We don't set up appointments for people ahead of time to do a curbside appointment. I think it's very hard for people to keep saying, "Oh, I'm definitely going to be there at 11:15." It doesn't work. While some people do have to wait in the line for curbside, we move people through fairly efficiently, and we get people through that line and get their stuff out of there, but don't control necessarily when they come. So.
Well, Jeff, at this point, can we, even without a motion, can we ask you and your staff to look at coming up with a plan where you would carve out the amount of staff that you need to do some sort of a schedule with which supports a split between curbside services and browsing services, certainly over the 5 days a week, and hopefully bringing in some Saturday hours to accommodate, and then coming back, hopefully coming back to us with either a recommendation at the next meeting or communicating with us during the time period saying, look, such and such has happened and we don't know where we're going with this, you know? So at least we can keep this moving. Is that where we could go at this point?
Absolutely. So that's not a problem. That was sort of my timing question was more about the what's the pressure to what pressure am I feeling from you to get this done week after next or week after this week, get this started in the following Monday. Is that the kind of pressure you're feeling from the community? I think
the only problem is the next meeting is very late because of Labor Day, isn't it?
I don't think we have to wait all the way to the next meeting to do that. I think I can, we have been thinking about this a lot. So I think the plan can be to you very quickly. I think we could get that put together and get it in place and then communicate that out to the public in ample time. I have one minor wrinkle, and I hate to, just not the data, but I am taking vacation the week of August, so it's kind of would have been a nice time to sort of start to think about that. But I will not be in the library that week. So
I'm sorry, which week was that?
August 24th. That week,
okay.
August 24th, I will not be in the library. I'm not going very far. So,
okay, you deserve a vacation. Everybody does.
Absolutely. So then do we have to go and revisit the emergency authorization piece? You should probably do that to allow you to have the authority to put a plan together.
At least through the next board meeting. We should
definitely
definitely extend it. I
maybe
think
one board meeting.
Okay.
Just one meeting? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I would make a motion to right now extend them to the next board meeting and we'll revisit it at that point.
Yeah.
That lets me authorize the New York State safety plan too, so we can get that put up and revamped as all part of the same plan. So
I have a motion on the table.
Okay, any second to Mary's motion? Harmeet, second. Okay, further discussion on the 1 month extension of the emergency authorization?
Does it make any difference as 1 month or 2 months or, I mean, there's obviously a difference, but is 1 month sufficient, Jeff? Or do you want it for 2 or?
I think 1 month is fine if we'll come back and talk about it at the next board meeting, till the next board meeting, not a month. So that would be my only recommendation.
Yes, to the next board meeting. Yeah, let's do it to the next. Well, I don't know. Is that okay with your motion, Mary?
Yeah.
Is that what you intended with the motion? Okay. To the next scheduled regular board meeting. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, abstentions? Okay, motion's carried. So you have the authorization for the next board meeting. And then you're going to communicate back to us in some format a plan of action, an action plan or recommendation plan.
Yep.
All right, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you all. I appreciate all of your thoughts, and we really needed to have a frank discussion. And I know this is not the best venue for that, but I just want to appreciate all of your comments. I appreciate all the thoughts, and I think I've got kind of a consensus, and I will get that put out to all of you rapidly, and then that will allow us to get that information put out to the public, so they know that we're not sitting on our hands. Like we've been doing a lot of work on this. So thank you.
Jeff, I would also ask as you guys put together those plans, let us know what we need to change about the current service offerings to make it manageable with the 2 teams the way you have it now. I don't have any objection to us needing to look towards the reopening plan. I just don't want the reopening plan to be because our current solution is unmanageable.
I got you.
Right?
Thank you. And I
comfortable reopening, not because we've just worn ourselves out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple other things to do tonight quickly, and then we have to go into executive session. So I'm just going to bang them out through the holidays and closures for 2021 and board meeting dates. That's just a update of our discussion.
It is basically just very, very quickly. It's adding Juneteenth as a day that the library is closed, but we're what I'm proposing, we don't treat it like a holiday where we will close the Friday because it's on a Saturday. It's just that Saturday for the folks that will be working on that Saturday, will be paid for their regular shift on that Saturday, but there's not a floating holiday or holiday that gets assigned to the day that we're closed, sort of treating it like New Year's Eve. The board has decided to close that day. It's not in the contract. That's
Okay.
how I
Good.
would.
The board meeting dates, did we get a list of those?
Yeah, that's on the next page. So 34.
Oh, 34.
Yep.
Okay, because we haven't received the school calendar yet to know if anything coincides with the school vacation.
I think we
Yeah,
could.
We would definitely be flexible in that. I mean, that's always been a tradition that we try to make that work with the school calendar, definitely.
So it's something we could change in the future if necessary.
Absolutely. So that's, and I was just going to say, we can put this out because we don't have all the information we necessarily need. Put this out and modify as necessary. There's plenty of time for us to get.
Yep.
This isn't the end all be all list. It's just a good place for us to hang our.
It's online somewhere because it gets approved in the spring. The school calendar gets approved mid-spring. So it's probably on the school website somewhere.
Huh.
I believe Kristen took that into account, but again, she's nodding.
Okay. So I need a motion on the holidays and closures for 2021 and board meeting dates.
So moved.
Okay, great.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed, exemptions? Okay, motion's carried. Is there any other old business?
I've got one quick question. Are we
Sure.
going to be a polling place in November?
Good question. They haven't asked me because we weren't one last time.
Okay, well, we may want to think about that. I'm just throwing it out there. We didn't.
Good. It's a
Yeah.
very good question. There's two things that happen in November. One, we're a polling place. The other one is that's traditionally when we hold our blood. So the question is, we will not be doing community meetings in November. If I have any say in it.
Right.
Unless you tell me exactly. I believe that that's not a thing we'll be doing in November.
Right.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out. We're not doing what in November?
Public meetings and community groups, programs, those sort of large gatherings in our rooms. I do not anticipate those coming back certainly by November. So the question is, it's a good question, polling place and or the blood drive.
Oh. Well, I can tell you one thing. If we consider being a polling place, we should calculate what the cost is to do it and tell them that they've got to reimburse us the cost. I'm hearing from people, somebody was telling me that if you're a polling place, you can be paid for that, which I doubt we've ever done. And I don't really think we cared in the past, but if we're incurring an expense, and there's a lot associated with that. So just throwing that out there for consideration.
Okay, so let us know if we're asked on that. Definitely. Okay, any other old business? Okay, great. We need to move into executive session to discuss a particular personnel matter.
That would be, yeah, I could have someone make a motion to move into executive session to discuss the employment history of a specific individual.
I make a motion.
Okay.
I
Mary?
second.
Okay, great. Any discussion? All those in favor? Who made that motion? Who seconded it? Just for the record.
Charmaine made it and I seconded it.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. Thanks. It's 8:44. So, okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. I'm going to stop the live stream now.
Okay.